Story 1. The Loop That Never Ended. Marcus Chen had been driving 18-wheelers for 23 years, hauling freight across the continental United States without incident. He'd driven through blizzards in Montana, dust storms in Nevada, and fog so thick in Oregon he could barely see an ornament. Nothing had ever rattled him, until the night of October 14, 2019, on Interstate 80 through Nebraska. He picked up a load of agricultural equipment in Des Moines, bound for a warehouse in Cheyenne. The manifest showed a delivery deadline at 8 a.m., giving him plenty of time for the 640-mile haul. Marcus left Iowa at 8 p.m., the sun already set, his CB radio crackling with occasional trucker chatter. The Nebraska plains stretched endlessly on either side of the highway, darkness swallowing beyond his headlights. Around 11 p.m., Marcus noticed he was approaching exit 177, a small rest area he'd used dozens of times before. The green sign reflected his headlights. Rest area 2 miles. His fuel gauge showed 3/4 full, and he just had coffee ago, so he planned to pass it by. 2 minutes later, his headlights illuminated the exit ramp. He stayed in the right lane, maintaining his 65 mph cruise. 5 minutes passed. Marcus checked his GPS. It showed him steadily progressing westward on I-80. Then his headlights caught another green sign, rest area 2 miles. He glanced at the dashboard clock, 11:17 p.m. That couldn't be right. He just passed that rest area. Marcus rubbed his eyes, thinking fatigue was playing tricks on him. He'd been driving for 3 hours straight. Maybe he was more tired than he realized. 2 minutes later, the same exit ramp appeared. Same configuration. Same weathered asphalt. Same flickering streetlight at the entrance. Marcus felt his chest tight. He grabbed his CB radio microphone. "This is Big Chen on I-80 westbound, mile marker 177. Anyone else out here experiencing anything strange? Over." Static answered him, not even the usual background chatter. Marcus tried again. "Anyone on this channel? Over." Nothing. He switched channels, cycling through all 40. Dead silence on every frequency. Smartphone showed no signal, not unusual in rural Nebraska, but unsettling nonetheless. Marcus focused on driving, watching his odometer. He'd drive exactly 10 miles and see what happened. The speedometer held steady at 65 mph. 1 mile passed, 2 miles, 5 miles. His GPS continued showing westward progress, 8 miles, 9 miles, 10 miles. Then impossibly his headlights illuminated the sign, rest area 2 miles. His hands trembled on the steering wheel. This wasn't fatigue. This was something else entirely. Marcus had heard stories every trucker had, about haunted stretches of highway, about drivers who disappeared, about roads that didn't follow normal rules. He'd always dismissed them as campfire tales, stories to pass the time at truck stops. Now he wasn't so sure. He decided to take the exit. Maybe stopping would break whatever loop he'd found himself in. As he decelerated onto the ramp, his headlights swept across the rest area. Looked normal enough, parking spaces for trucks and cars, a small brick building housing restrooms, vending machines visible through a window. But there were no other vehicles, not a single car or truck. At nearly midnight on I-80, one of America's busiest transcontinental routes, that was impossible. Marcus parked his rig and killed the engine. The sudden silence felt oppressive, broken only by the ticking of cooling metal. He grabbed his flashlight and stepped out, his boots crunching on gravel. The air felt wrong, too still, too quiet. No wind, no insects, no distant traffic sounds, nothing. He approached the restroom building. The door opened smoothly, interior lights flickering to life automatically. Everything looked maintained, clean, even. Paper towels in the dispensers, soap in the dispensers. But when Marcus turned on a faucet, no water came out. He tried another. Same result. All the fixtures were dry. Back outside, Marcus checked the vending machines. They were fully stocked with snacks and drinks, but when he tried to read the expiration dates on the packages, they were blurred, not faded but somehow indistinct, as if he was looking at them through water. He pressed his face close to the glass, squinting. The dates seemed to shift when he looked directly at them, never quite coming into focus. A sound made him spin around, the distant rumble of a diesel engine. Relief flooded through him. Another truck was approaching on the highway. He could see headlights in the distance coming from the east. Marcus ran toward the exit ramp, waving his flashlight. The truck would stop. He'd talk to another driver. He wouldn't be alone in this nightmare. But as the truck approached the rest area, it didn't slow down. Marcus stood at the edge of the ramp, waving frantically. The truck passed, close enough that he could feel the wind displacement, close enough that he could see into the cab. The driver was staring straight ahead, hands at 10 and 2, expression blank. Running lights spelled out a company name Marcus didn't recognize, Perpetual Freight. He watched the taillights disappear into the darkness. Then exactly 2 minutes later, he saw headlights approaching from the east again. The same truck, same company name, same blank-faced driver who didn't respond to Marcus's desperate waving. The truck passed and disappeared. 2 minutes later, it appeared again from the east. Marcus stood frozen, watching this impossible loop. The truck appeared and passed 7 times before he forced himself to move. He ran back to his own rig, climbed inside, started the engine. He had to get back on the highway, had to keep moving. Sitting still felt like accepting this reality. He pulled back onto I-80 westbound, accelerating to 65 mph. His GPS showed his position updating. Mile markers passed, 178, 179, 180. Marcus allowed himself to hope. Then his headlights caught the green sign, rest area 2 miles. No, he said aloud. No, no, no. He pressed the accelerator, pushing his speed to 75 mph. The truck's engine roared. He watched the mile markers blur past. But 2 minutes later, at exactly 75 mph, the rest area entrance appeared. Marcus tried going slower, 45 mph. Same result. He tried the left lane instead of the right. Same result. He tried closing his eyes for exactly 2 minutes while holding the wheel steady. When he opened them, the rest area sign was ahead. Every variation produced the same outcome. Every 2 minutes of driving, regardless of speed or lane position, brought him back to exit 177. Hours passed. Marcus's fuel gauge dropped to half, then a quarter. The dashboard clock showed 2:47 a.m., though he'd lost count of how many times he'd passed the rest area. 50 times, 100. His mind was fracturing, unable to process the impossibility. He'd driven enough distance to reach Cheyenne twice over, yet he remained trapped in this repeating segment of highway. At 3:15 a.m., Marcus noticed something different. As he approached the rest area for the 100th or 150th time, he saw a figure standing beside the entrance sign. A man in a truck driver's uniform. Marcus hit the brakes, bringing his rig to a stop on the shoulder. He grabbed his flashlight and approached the figure. The man stood perfectly still, facing the highway. As Marcus got closer, he could see the uniform was old-fashioned, 1970s style, with embroidered patches Marcus didn't recognize. The man's face was weathered, aged years. When he finally turned to look at Marcus, his eyes reflected the flashlight beam like an animal's. "How long?" Marcus asked, his voice cracking. 1976, the man said. May 3rd, I entered the loop on May 3rd, 1976. Marcus did the math, 43 years. This man had been trapped here for 43 years. That's impossible. You'd be dead, starved, dehydrated. The man smiled, but there was no humor in it. You don't get hungry here, don't get thirsty, don't age. You just drive forever, or until you figure out how to leave. How? Marcus grabbed the man's arm. How do I leave? I don't know, the man said. I've tried everything, every speed, every lane. I've crashed my truck into the barriers. I wake up at the start of the loop, truck undamaged. I've waited at the rest area for days. When I get back in and drive, I'm back in the loop. This highway doesn't let go. Marcus released him, stepping back. There has to be a way. Maybe, the man said. Maybe someone finds it eventually, but I never did. Neither did the others. Others? The man pointed toward the rest area. In the darkness beyond the building, Marcus could now see dozens of trucks parked in neat rows. Old trucks, ancient trucks, models from the 1970s, 1960s, maybe earlier. And standing beside each truck, barely visible in the darkness, were figures, drivers who'd entered the loop and never left. Marcus ran back to his truck, heart hammering. He climbed inside, locked the doors, a useless gesture, but it made him feel marginally safer. His fuel gauge showed 1/8 of a tank. Soon his truck would run out of diesel. Then what? Would he become like that man, like those others, standing beside the road for decades? He keyed his CB radio one more time, cycling through channels, not expecting a response. On channel 19, a voice suddenly crackled through. "Driver in distress on I-80, exit 177. You need to listen carefully. You have one chance to break the loop. When you see the rest area sign, you need to static consume the transmission." Marcus frantically adjusted the squelch, trying to recover the signal. "Hello, hello, I didn't hear you. What do I need to do?" But the channel had gone silent again. One chance. He had one chance, but he didn't know what it was. Marcus gripped the steering wheel, staring down the highway at the darkness ahead. His fuel gauge showed the needle trembling at 1/8. He had maybe 30 miles left before the tank ran dry. 15 loops. 15 chances to figure out what he'd missed. He accelerated back onto the highway, watching everything with desperate intensity. The road, the mile markers, the signs, the median, anything that might be different, might offer a clue. On the 12th loop, with his fuel gauge reading empty and his engine starting to sputter, Marcus saw it. On the rest area sign, in letters so small he'd missed them every previous time, were words beneath rest area 2 miles. Point of no return. On the 13th loop, he didn't look at the sign. He closed his eyes before his headlights could illuminate it, keeping them closed as he drove past where the rest area should be. His truck shuddered. The engine coughed, then impossibly smoothed out. Marcus opened his eyes to see a mile marker. 181, then 182, then 183. He'd broken free. Marcus drove the remaining miles to Cheyenne in a daze, arriving just as the sun rose. He made his delivery, then sat in his truck for an hour, shaking. When he finally checked his phone, the GPS log showed his position jumping from mile marker 177 to mile marker 181, nothing in between. As if those hours, those hundreds of loops had never existed. But his fuel tank was nearly empty, and his odometer showed an additional 327 miles. Marcus Chen still drives trucks. He still runs I-80 through Nebraska. But he always takes exit 177 now, always stops at that rest area, and always checks for new trucks in those dark rows beyond the building. Each time there are more. Story 2. The passenger who wasn't there. Rachel Kowalski had a strict rule during her 12 years of long-haul trucking: never pick up hitchhikers. The rule had served her well through countless miles across North America, keeping her safe and her insurance clean. But on the rainy night of March 8, 2021, on Highway 93 through Montana, Rachel broke her rule. She would spend the rest of her life wishing she hadn't. The storm had rolled in around 10 p.m., transforming the highway into a ribbon of slick asphalt reflecting her headlights. Rachel was hauling furniture from Seattle to Billings, running slightly behind schedule but not dangerously so. The windshield wipers beat a steady rhythm against the downpour, and her CB radio crackled with weather warnings from other drivers reporting severe conditions ahead. At mile marker 67, her headlights caught a figure standing on the shoulder, thumb extended. Rachel's first instinct was to pass. Hitchhikers were other people's problems. But as she drew closer, she saw it was a young woman, maybe 25, soaked through and shivering violently. No jacket, no backpack, just standing in the pouring rain in jeans and t-shirt. Something about the woman's expression, desperate, terrified, made Rachel hit the brakes. She pulled onto the shoulder 50 yards ahead, watching in her mirror as the woman ran toward the truck. Rachel unlocked the passenger door, already second-guessing her decision. The woman climbed up into the cab, bringing a wave of cold air and rain. "Thank you," she gasped. "Thank you so much. I've been out there for hours. My car broke down and my phone's dead and nobody would stop." She was younger than Rachel had thought, early 20s, with dark hair plastered to her pale face. "You're lucky I came along," Rachel said, putting the truck in gear. "Not many drivers pick up hitchhikers anymore. Too risky." "What's your name?" "Sarah," the woman said. "Sarah Mitchell. I'm trying to get to Kalispell. My sister lives there." "Are you headed that direction?" Rachel nodded. "I'm going to Billings, but I can drop you at Kalispell. It's on the way. That's about 90 miles from here. You'll be there in a couple hours." She turned the heat up, noticing Sarah was still shivering despite the warm cab. "There's a blanket behind my seat if you need it." Sarah grabbed the blanket, wrapping it around herself. "You're a lifesaver." "Literally, I was starting to think I'd freeze out there." She stared out the windshield at the rain. This storm came out of nowhere. One minute it was clear, the next minute this. They drove in silence for a few minutes. Rachel kept glancing at her passenger, something nagging at her awareness. Sarah wasn't dripping. Her clothes had been soaked when she climbed in, but now there was no water on the seat, no puddle on the floor mat. And despite wrapping herself in the blanket, Sarah hadn't stopped shivering, violent tremors that seemed to shake her entire body. "You okay?" Rachel asked. "You want me to turn the heat up more?" "I'm so cold," Sarah whispered. "So cold I can't get warm." Her teeth chattered audibly. "How much further to Kalispell?" Rachel checked the GPS. "About 85 miles. You said your car broke down. Where is it?" Sarah didn't answer immediately. When Rachel glanced over, the young woman was staring at her lap, trembling. "Back there," she finally said. "Back at mile marker 67, it just stopped. Engine died, everything died, the radio, the lights, everything. Then I saw headlights coming toward me. I thought they'd stop, but they didn't. They hit me." Rachel's hands tightened on the wheel. "Hit you? You were in an accident. Sarah, are you hurt? Do you need a hospital?" "I'm so cold," Sarah repeated, not answering the question. "I've been so cold since the impact. My car spun off the road and down the embankment. I climbed out, tried to flag someone down, but nobody stopped. Nobody stopped for hours and hours." "When did this happen?" Rachel asked, knees crawl up her spine. "Tonight." Sarah turned to look at her and Rachel felt her breath catch. In the dim light from the dashboard, Sarah's eyes looked wrong, too dark, too empty. "What day is it?" Sarah asked. "March 8th, Rachel said. "Monday, March 8th, 2021. Sarah made a sound between a laugh and a sob. "3 years, she whispered. "I've been standing there for 3 years, waiting for someone to see me, waiting for someone to stop." Rachel's heart hammered against her ribs. "What are you talking about? That doesn't make sense. You just got in my truck 15 minutes ago." "March 8th, 2018, Sarah said. "That's when my car was hit. That's when I died, but I couldn't leave. I stood there on the shoulder watching trucks pass, trying to flag them down. None of them stopped. None of them even slowed down. For 3 years I stood there in the rain, getting colder and colder, waiting for someone to see me." Rachel slammed on the brakes. The truck skidded slightly on the wet road before coming to a stop. "Get out," she said, her voice shaking. "Get out of my truck right now." Sarah turned to her, and now Rachel could see the wrongness clearly. Sarah's skin had a gray pallor. Her lips were blue, and beneath the blanket Rachel could see dark stains on Sarah's t-shirt, stains that looked like blood. "I can't get out," Sarah said. "You stopped for me, you saw me. That means you're the one who has to take me home." Her shivering had stopped. She sat perfectly still now, staring at Rachel with those empty eyes. "Please, I just want to go home. I want to see my sister." "You're not real," Rachel said, though even as she spoke, she knew it wasn't true. Sarah was very real. "Just not alive. This isn't happening." "Check your mirror," Sarah said. Rachel looked. In the passenger side mirror, she could see the cab of her truck. She could see herself gripping the steering wheel, but the passenger seat appeared empty. No Sarah, no blanket, just an empty seat. Rachel turned back to look directly at Sarah. She was there, solid and present, wrapped in the blanket, but the mirror showed nothing. I don't have much time, Sarah said. The connection is fragile. You saw me because you have the gift. Some people can see us, most can't. But I need to get to Kalispell before dawn or I'll be pulled back to mile marker 67. I'll have to wait there again, maybe for another 3 years, maybe forever. Please, I'm begging you, take me home. Rachel's rational mind screamed at her to refuse, to force this impossible passenger out of her truck. But another part of her, the part that had made her stop in the first place, felt overwhelming pity. 3 years standing in the rain, invisible to the world, desperate to go home. 3 years trapped at the site of her death. If I do this, slowly, if I take you to Kalispell, what happens then? I don't know, Sarah admitted. But anything is better than standing on that highway forever, please. Rachel put the truck in gear and started driving. The windshield wipers continued their rhythm. The rain continued to fall. And Sarah sat in the passenger seat, visible to Rachel's eyes but absent from every mirror, slowly warming as they traveled north. They drove for an hour in silence. Rachel tried the CB radio, hoping to hear another voice, anything to ground her in reality. But all she got was static. Her phone showed no signal. Every few minutes she glanced at Sarah, confirming she was still there, still real despite her mirror invisibility. Tell me about your sister, Rachel finally said, needing to fill the oppressive silence. Sarah's expression softened. Emma, she's 2 years older than me. We used to be so close. I was driving to visit her that night. She just had a baby, my nephew. I never got to meet him. Tears rolled down Sarah's cheeks. She thinks I abandoned her. She thinks I didn't care enough to visit, but I tried. I was coming. I was almost there when the accident happened. She'll know you tried, Rachel said, though she wasn't sure how that would help. What would Emma see when they arrived? Would she see her dead sister, or would Rachel show up alone talking to someone invisible? The GPS showed 60 miles to Kalispell. Sarah had stopped shivering entirely now. She looked more solid somehow, more present. I can feel myself getting stronger, she said. The closer we get, the more real I become. Thank you for this. Thank you for seeing me. At 40 miles out, Rachel noticed other details. Sarah's clothes were older styles from 2018, she realized. The blood stains on her shirt were concentrated on her left side below her ribs. Can I ask, how did you die? What happened exactly? Sarah stared out at the rain. A semi-truck crossed the center line. Driver fell asleep, they said later. His truck hit my car head-on. My car went off the road, rolled down an embankment. I was trapped inside for hours before I died. So cold, so much pain. When I finally climbed out, I was dead, but I didn't realize it at first. I tried to flag down help, but nobody stopped because nobody could see me. Eventually, I understood. I was a ghost, trapped at the place where I died, 20 miles out. Sarah was fully solid now, no longer trembling. She looked like any other passenger. Do you regret stopping for me? She asked. Rachel considered the question. Did she regret it? This night had shattered her understanding of reality. She'd never feel safe alone in her truck again. She'd spend the rest of her career wondering if every shadow was a ghost, if every hitchhiker was already dead. But looking at Sarah's hopeful expression, seeing the desperate gratitude in her eyes, Rachel shook her head. No, I don't regret it. They entered Kalispell just before 2 a.m. Sarah directed Rachel through residential streets until they reached a small house with a porch light on. That's Emma's house, Sarah said. You can let me out here. Rachel pulled to the curb and stopped. Sarah unwrapped herself from the blanket, folding it neatly. She turned to Rachel with a sad smile. I wish I could tell you this has a happy ending, that I'll walk up to that door and everything will be fine, but I don't think that's how this works. What do you think will happen? Rachel asked. I think I'll fade, Sarah said. I think I'm only this solid because of your belief, your willingness to help. Once I leave your truck, once that connection breaks, I'll go back to being invisible. Maybe I'll be able to watch Emma from a distance, make sure she's okay. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's all I was supposed to do, just get close enough to see her one more time. Sarah reached for the door handle, then paused. There's something you should know. Mile marker 67 on Highway 93, that's a bad spot. I'm not the only one who died there. I've seen others trapped like I was. If you ever drive that stretch again and you see someone on the shoulder, consider stopping. You have the gift to see us. Use it. Help them if you can." "I will," Rachel promised, though the thought terrified her. Sarah opened the door and climbed down. Rachel watched her walk toward the house, moving up the driveway. With each step, Sarah became more translucent, fading like morning mist. By the time she reached the porch, she was barely visible. She turned back to wave at Rachel, then walked through the closed front door as if it didn't exist. Rachel sat in her truck for another hour, staring at Emma's house. A light turned on in an upstairs window. A shadow moved across the curtains. Someone unable to sleep, perhaps, sensing something but not knowing what. Rachel hoped Emma felt something, some sense that her sister had made it home after all. When Rachel finally drove away, she checked her passenger seat. The blanket was still folded neatly where Sarah had left it. But when Rachel touched it, the fabric was ice cold and dripping wet, as if it had been left out in the rain for years. Rachel Kowalski still drives trucks. She still runs Highway 93 through Montana. And she still watches mile marker 67 every time she passes, seeing figures standing on the shoulder that other drivers never see. People who died on that cursed stretch of road, waiting years or decades for someone with the gift to stop and help them home. She stops when she can. She listens to their stories, and she drives them to wherever they need to go, giving them one last chance to say goodbye to the world they left behind. Her passenger seat is often occupied now by travelers who cast no reflection and leave only cold, wet blankets behind. Story 3. The Phantom Convoy. James Sullivan had been coordinating convoy operations for Summit Logistics for 8 years. His job involved managing groups of company trucks running the same routes, staggering their departures to maintain steady deliveries, while providing drivers the security of traveling together through remote areas. On November 12, 2020, James organized what should have been a routine convoy. 3 trucks hauling appliances from Phoenix to Denver via Highway 160 through New Mexico and Colorado. He expected a boring, uneventful trip. Instead, he got a nightmare that ended careers and left one driver institutionalized. The convoy consisted of 3 experienced drivers: Rick Martinez with 19 years on the road, Bate Chen with 14 years, and Tommy Brennan with 11 years. They departed Phoenix at 7 p.m., maintaining radio contact on their dedicated channel. James monitored their progress from the operations center, tracking their GPS positions on his computer screen. The first few hours went smoothly. All 3 trucks maintained formation, called in their positions at checkpoints, and reported normal conditions. At 11:43 p.m., Rick's voice crackled over the radio. "Summit 1 to base. We're approaching the turnoff to Highway 160. Weather looks clear. All 3 trucks in formation. ETA to Durango is 2:30 a.m. "Copy that, Summit 1, James replied. "Weather service shows clear conditions all the way to Durango. Safe travels." 20 minutes later, Bates' voice came through. "Summit 2 to Summit 1. Rick, I'm seeing lights behind us. Looks like another convoy. 4, maybe 5 trucks. They're catching up fast." James checked his tracking system. The GPS showed 3 dots representing his convoy on Highway 160, but no other Summit Logistics trucks were scheduled on that route. "Summit 2, those aren't our trucks," James said. "Probably another company running the same route. Just maintain your spacing and let them pass if they want to." "Copy that," Bates said. 10 minutes passed. Then Tommy's voice, sounding uncertain. "Summit 3 to convoy. Those behind us, are you guys seeing this? They look weird, old, like really old models. I can't make out any company logos." Rick responded. "Summit 1 confirms. I see them in my mirrors now. 5 trucks. Vintage models, 1960s, maybe 1970s. Could be collectors or a specialty hauling company." They're definitely hauling something, riding low on their suspension. James frowned at his computer screen. Something was nagging at him, but he couldn't identify what. All Summit trucks just maintain course and speed. If they want to pass, let them. No heroes. Bates' voice came back, now with an edge of concern. Summit 2 here, those trucks, they're running without lights. No headlights, no running lights, nothing. But I can see them clearly. They're reflecting moonlight or something. How are they driving without lights in the middle of nowhere? James felt his stomach clench. Summit 2, confirm. You're saying 5 trucks are running without any lights on Highway 160. That's affirmative, Bates said. It's impossible, but I'm looking right at them. They're maybe 200 yards behind us now and closing. Old Peterbilt models, I think. The kind with the long hoods, chrome everywhere, but completely dark. No lights at all. Rick's voice interrupted. Summit 1 here. I'm slowing down to let them pass. This is freaking me out. James watched the GPS dots on his screen. All 3 Summit trucks were decelerating. All units, I'm watching your position. You're slowing to 50 miles per hour. Are the trucks behind you also slowing? Negative, Tommy said. They're still closing. Jesus, they're right on my bumper now. I can see the lead truck's grill in my mirror. It's maybe 20 feet behind me. No driver, the cab is empty. Say again, Summit 3. James leaned forward, certain he'd misheard. The trucks are empty. Tommy's voice rose in pitch. There's nobody driving them. The cabs are empty. I'm looking right at them, no driver in any of them. James grabbed his phone, pulling up the emergency contact for New Mexico State Police. But before he could dial, Rick's voice came through, raw with panic. They're passing us. All 5 trucks are overtaking on the left. Summit convoy, do not look directly at these trucks. Keep your eyes on the road. Summit 1, what are you seeing? James demanded. Rick, report. There was a long pause filled only with static. Then Rick's voice subdued and shaking. The cabs are empty, all 5 trucks, no drivers. They're rolling along at 60 miles per hour with nobody behind the wheel. And the trailers, James, the trailers are loaded with something. I can see shapes through gaps in the side panels. They look like bodies, wrapped bodies, Bates screamed. The sound cut through the connection, sharp and terrified. They're gone. Convoy just vanished. They were right beside me and then they were. They didn't speed up or slow down, they just disappeared like they were never there. James was on his feet now, other night shift coordinators gathering around his desk. All Summit trucks, report your positions and status. Rick, Summit 1 is okay, Rick said, breathing hard. I'm pulling over, I need a minute. Summit 2 is pulling over also, Bates said. James, what the hell was that? Summit 3 pulling over, Tommy confirmed. I'm shaking so bad I can't drive. James checked the GPS. All 3 trucks had stopped on the shoulder of Highway 160, roughly at mile marker 89. All units, stay put. I'm reviewing the GPS logs and calling Highway Patrol. Do not proceed until I tell you it's safe. He pulled up the detailed tracking data, expecting to see some explanation. Maybe the drivers had hallucinated, or there had been radio interference causing confusion. But the GPS logs showed something impossible. For exactly 12 minutes from 12:17 a.m. to 12:29 a.m., all 3 Summit trucks had been traveling at 60 mph. But during that same 12 minutes, they had covered only 3 miles of highway, a quarter of the distance they should have covered. It was as if time had dilated, stretching those 12 minutes into nearly an hour while maintaining the appearance of normal speed. James called the New Mexico State Police, explaining the situation as calmly as he could. The dispatcher sounded skeptical, but agreed to send a patrol car to check on the trucks. While waiting, James pulled up historical data for Highway 160 around mile marker 89. What he found made his blood run cold. On November 12, 1973, exactly 47 years ago to the day, a convoy of 5 trucks from Southwestern Freight Company had been traveling Highway 160 toward Durango. All 5 trucks had vanished somewhere around mile marker 89. No wreckage was ever found. No bodies were recovered. The trucks and their drivers simply disappeared, hauling cargo that was never identified in the official reports. The case remained unsolved. James returned to the radio. "Summit Convoy, I need to ask you something. Did any of you notice the date those trucks looked like they were from?" "Early 70s, Rick said immediately. "The models, the chrome styling, definitely early 70s. 1973, James said. "Those trucks disappeared on this exact stretch of highway on November 12, 1973. You saw them, or their ghosts, or whatever they've become." Silence greeted this statement. Then Bates' voice, barely a whisper. "James, they weren't ghosts. They were solid. I could hear their engines. I could smell diesel exhaust. They were real trucks." "Then where did they go?" James asked. "You all saw them disappear." "I don't know," Bates said, "but I saw inside one of the trailers for just a second before they vanished." Rick was right. There were bodies, wrapped in plastic or canvas, dozens of them, and they were moving, shifting around like they were alive but couldn't get free. The state police arrived 30 minutes later. The officer took statements from all three drivers, his expression growing increasingly skeptical. No, he hadn't seen any trucks on his drive to their location. No, there were no reports of vintage trucks on Highway 160. No, he couldn't explain the missing time shown in the GPS logs, probably a technical glitch. James authorized the convoy to continue to Durango, but none of the drivers wanted to proceed. They drove back to Phoenix instead, returning the next day in full daylight. Rick Martinez retired from trucking 2 weeks later. Bate Chen requested permanent reassignment to daytime routes west of the Mississippi. Tommy Brennan required psychological counseling and never drove through New Mexico again. James spent weeks researching the 1973 incident. The official reports were sparse, but he found newspaper archives that filled in details. The Southwestern Freight Company convoy had been hauling classified cargo for a government contractor, specifically medical waste from a military research facility. The manifest listed the cargo as biological specimens requiring special handling and disposal. When the trucks vanished, federal investigators had swarmed the area, searching for weeks. They found nothing, but there were witness accounts buried in the archives. A rancher reported seeing 5 trucks driving in formation along Highway 160 on the night of November 13, 1973, the day after the trucks supposedly vanished. Then again on November 13, 1974, and 1975, and every year after, always on the same date, always around mile marker 89. The rancher reported them driving without lights, with empty cabs, carrying cargo that moved and shifted in the trailers. James contacted the rancher's family. The old man had died in 1998, but his grandson confirmed the stories. "Grandpa used to watch for them every November 12th, the grandson said. Called them the Phantom Convoy, said they were cursed, doomed to drive that route forever because of what they'd been carrying. He never said exactly what it was, but he was convinced those trucks were hauling something that shouldn't have existed, something that wouldn't stay dead." On November 12, 2021, James assigned no trucks to Highway 160, but he monitored CB radio chatter from independent drivers on that route. At exactly 12:17 a.m., multiple drivers reported seeing a convoy of 5 vintage trucks overtaking them around mile marker 89. The trucks ran without lights. The cabs appeared empty. And witnesses who got close enough saw the cargo, shapes wrapped in plastic, moving and shifting, pressing against the trailer walls as if trying to escape. James Sullivan still coordinates convoy operations for Summit Logistics, but he never schedules trucks on Highway 160 through New Mexico on November 12th. He's marked it in the system as a maintenance blackout date, with a note in the database that only he can see. Phantom Convoy active. Route unsafe. Do not assign. The other coordinators think he's superstitious. The drivers who experience the Phantom Convoy know better. And every year on November 12th, James stays late at the operations center, monitoring GPS tracking for any truck that might accidentally end up on Highway 160 around mile marker 89. So far, he's managed to redirect them all. But he knows eventually his luck will run out, and another driver will encounter those 5 trucks from 1973, still hauling their impossible cargo toward a destination they will never reach. Story 4. The Voice on Channel 9. Daniel Park had been driving long-haul routes for 16 years, and he'd learned early that CB Radio Channel 9 was reserved for emergencies. It was an unwritten rule in the trucking community. Channel 19 for general chatter, Channel 9 for when things went wrong. Flat tires, engine trouble, accidents, medical emergencies. Channel 9 was sacred, kept clear so help could be summoned quickly. In all his years on the road, Daniel had only used Channel 9 3 times, and each time fellow truckers had responded within minutes. It was one of the things he loved about the profession, the sense of community, the knowledge that help was always available. On the night of August 3, 2019, while driving through eastern Wyoming on I-80, Daniel learned that not all voices on Channel 9 were human, and not all calls for help should be answered. He'd left Cheyenne at 10 p.m., hauling electronics to Omaha. The night was clear, temperature pleasant, traffic light. Daniel had his CB radio tuned to Channel 19, listening to other drivers swap stories and traffic information. Around midnight, somewhere between Cheyenne and Laramie, the radio crackled with interference, then went silent. Daniel cycled through channels, getting nothing but static on all of them. He was about to give up and rely on his smartphone for navigation when Channel 9 suddenly came to life. A voice, female, young-sounding, emerged from the static. "This is Channel 9 emergency. I need help, please somebody help me." Daniel grabbed his microphone immediately. "This is Nighthawk on I-80 eastbound, mile marker 235. What's your emergency? Over." "Thank God," the woman's voice said, filled with relief and terror in equal measure. "I've been trying to reach someone for hours. My car broke down on I-80. I don't know exactly where. It's dark and I can't see any mile markers. There's someone following me. I ran from my car and I'm hiding in a rest area bathroom, but I can hear him outside." Daniel felt adrenaline spike through his system. This wasn't a mechanical problem. This was life-threatening. "Okay, stay calm. I'm going to call Highway Patrol for you. What's your name?" "Jennifer," the woman said. "Jennifer Ross, please hurry. He's trying to open the bathroom door. I have it locked, but I don't know how long it'll hold." "I'm calling now," Daniel said, grabbing his phone. But when he looked at the screen, it showed no signal. That was impossible. He'd had full bars just 5 minutes ago. "Jennifer, my phone has no signal. I need you to tell me exactly where you are. What rest area, eastbound or westbound?" "I don't know." Jennifer's voice rose in panic. "It's just a rest area. There's a parking lot and a bathroom building. I can see trucks parked outside, but when I tried to get their attention, they didn't respond. Please, you have to find me before he gets in. He's saying things, terrible things, saying what he's going to do to me." Daniel pressed his accelerator, pushing his truck faster. "I'm looking for you, Jennifer. Keep talking to me. What can you see from where you are? Any signs, any landmarks?" "I can see the highway," Jennifer said. "Cars passing. It's so frustrating. They're all so close, but they can't hear me screaming. Please, please find me. He's using something to work on the door lock. I can hear metal scraping." Daniel's mind raced. He was at mile marker 237 now, having covered 2 miles since the call started. He began watching for rest areas. Wyoming had them every 20 or 30 miles. 80. "Jennifer, I need you to do something for me. Look around the bathroom. Is there a window? Can you see anything that might tell me which rest area you're at?" "There's a window," Jennifer said. "It's small and high up, but I can see through it. I can see, oh God, I can see my car. It's in the parking lot. A blue Honda Civic. The hood is up and I can see him now. He's outside, walking around the building looking for another way in." "Describe him," Daniel said, both to keep Jennifer talking and to gather information for the police. Tall, wearing a dark jacket. I can't see his face. He's carrying something, a crowbar maybe. He's going to break the door down. I don't have much time. Daniel passed mile marker 240. No rest area yet. Stay with me, Jennifer. I'm coming. Do you remember where you broke down? How far back was it? I don't know, Jennifer sobbed. I ran for so long, maybe a mile. My car died and he pulled up behind me asking if I needed help, but something felt wrong. The way he looked at me. I said I'd already called for help and he got angry, said I was lying, said I needed to get in his truck. I ran. God, I just ran into the darkness and found this rest area. Mile marker 243. Still no rest area. Daniel grabbed his CB microphone. This is Nighthawk calling any truck on I-80 eastbound. I have an emergency situation. Woman in distress at a rest area. Has anyone seen a rest area in the past 20 miles? Over. Only static answered him. The CB seemed to be working. He could hear the carrier wave when he keyed the microphone, but no other truckers responded. It was as if he was alone on the entire highway. Jennifer, are you still there? Daniel asked, switching back to Channel 9. I'm here, she whispered. He's at the window now, looking in at me. He's smiling. He knows I'm trapped. Stay away from the window, Daniel said. Find something you can use as a weapon, a trash can, anything. There's nothing, Jennifer said. It's just a bathroom. Sink, toilet, paper towel dispenser. Nothing I can use. He's going back to the door. Oh God, he's going to break it down. Please, where are you? You said you were coming. Daniel was at mile marker 248 now, and he'd passed no rest areas. A horrible suspicion was forming in his mind. Jennifer, what direction were you traveling when your car broke down, eastbound or westbound? Eastbound, Jennifer said immediately. From Cheyenne toward Laramie, please hurry. What year is it, Jennifer? Daniel asked, dreading the answer. What? Why are you asking me that? It's 2019. August 3rd, 2019. What does that matter? He's breaking through. Door is splintering. Jennifer, listen to me very carefully, Daniel said. Where are you? A cell phone. No, I found a radio in one of the trucks in the parking lot, Jennifer said. The door was unlocked. I grabbed it and ran back to the bathroom. Why are you asking me this? Help me. Daniel pulled his truck onto the shoulder and stopped. He was shaking, understanding now what was happening but not wanting to believe it. Jennifer, what kind of trucks did you see in the parking lot? I don't know, big trucks, semi-trucks. Why does it matter? Describe them, Daniel insisted. Old trucks, new trucks. Old, I guess, Jennifer said. I don't know much about trucks. They look like the kind from old movies. Please stop asking stupid questions and help me. The door is breaking. Daniel pulled out his phone and searched for Jennifer Ross missing 1989 Wyoming I-80. The screen loaded despite showing no signal bars. The results made his blood run cold. Jennifer Ross, age 23, had disappeared on August 3, 1989, on I-80 between Cheyenne and Laramie. Her blue Honda Civic was found abandoned at mile marker 245 with the hood up. Jennifer was never seen again. The case remained unsolved, though investigators suspected she'd been the victim of a serial killer who'd been operating along I-80 during the late 1980s. Jennifer, Daniel said softly. I can't help you. I'm sorry. I'm 30 years too late. What? Her voice was confused, terrified. What are you talking about? You said you were coming. You promised. I'm trying to reach you in 2019, Daniel explained, though the words felt insane even as he spoke them. But you're calling from 1989, 30 years ago. I don't know how this is possible, but you're calling across time, through this CB radio, and I can't reach you. I can't help you. No, Jennifer said. No, that's not true. You're lying. You're playing some sick joke. The door just broke open. He's coming in. Oh God, please, somebody help me. Help! Her scream cut off abruptly. The radio went dead silent, not even static remaining. Daniel sat in his truck, hands shaking, tears running down his face. He just listened to a woman die. A woman who'd been dead for 30 years, calling for help that would never arrive, replaying her final moments through some inexplicable breach in time. He sat there for 20 minutes before forcing himself to continue driving. At mile marker 245, he saw the rest area, Prairie View Rest Area, the sign read. Daniel pulled in, parked, and walked to the bathroom building. It looked maintained and normal, recently cleaned. But when he examined the women's bathroom door, he saw something that made him stagger backward. The wood around the lock was damaged, splintered and broken, then repaired over. The paint was old, clearly decades old, but the pattern of damage matched what Jennifer had described. This was where she'd made her last stand. This was where she died while calling for help that was 30 years in the future. Daniel returned to his truck and pulled up the historical information on Jennifer Ross's disappearance. The news reports from 1989 noted that several truckers had been parked at Prairie View Rest Area the night Jennifer vanished, but all claimed they'd seen and heard nothing. The bathroom door had been found broken down, blood inside, but Jennifer's body was never recovered. He read through the reports, looking for any mention of CB radio. Finally, he found it. Buried in the investigative notes was a detail that most reporters had ignored. One of the truckers parked at the rest area that night reported that his CB radio had been stolen from his unlocked cab. The trucker had assumed it was simple theft and filed an insurance claim. But Daniel knew better. Jennifer had grabbed that CB radio in her final desperate minutes, trying to call for help. And somehow, impossibly, her call had echoed forward through time, reaching Daniel's radio 30 years later. He continued his drive to Omaha in a daze, arriving hours behind schedule. In his report to the company, he cited unforeseen delays without elaboration. What could he say that wouldn't sound insane? Over the following weeks, Daniel researched CB radio anomalies. He found scattered reports of truckers receiving distress calls that couldn't be verified, voices asking for help at locations where no one could be found. The reports went back decades. Some truckers claimed to have received calls from drivers who died years before. Others reported hearing conversations that seemed to be from different time periods, references to presidents long dead or trucks long out of production. One report particularly chilled him. A trucker in 1989 had reported receiving a strange call on Channel 9 from a man claiming to be from the future, who said he was trying to help a woman named Jennifer Ross. The trucker had assumed it was a prank and ignored it, but Daniel understood now. That call had been from him. Somehow, his conversation with Jennifer had echoed backward through time as well as forward, reaching a trucker who'd been nearby in 1989 but who hadn't believed it or investigated. If that trucker had taken the call seriously, if he'd checked the rest area, could Jennifer have been saved? Or was her fate fixed, unchangeable, her death a closed loop in time that Daniel's call couldn't? Daniel Park still drives trucks. He still runs I-80 through Wyoming. But he never stops at Prairie View Rest Area anymore, and he keeps his CB radio off Channel 9 unless absolutely necessary. Because sometimes, on clear nights around mile marker 245, he can hear Jennifer's voice breaking through the static, calling for help that will never arrive in time, trapped in an endless loop of her final terrified minutes, reaching across 30 years to beg for rescue from a future that can hear her but cannot save her. Other truckers have reported similar calls now, different voices, different emergencies, all broadcasting from the past through some quirk of radio waves and tragedy. Channel 9 isn't just for emergencies anymore. It's become a conduit for ghosts, for voices trapped in time, calling forever for help that comes too late or not at all. And Daniel knows that someday, his own voice might join them, broadcasting forward through the years, seeking help from drivers who haven't been born yet, trapped in an eternal moment of crisis on some darkened highway. Story 5. The town Thatmoved. Patricia Mendoza had driven through Ashford, Texas exactly 47 times during her 9 years hauling agricultural supplies through the Southwest. The town sat on Highway 87, roughly 70 miles south of Lubbock. a small, unremarkable place with a population of maybe 800 people, one stoplight, two gas stations, a diner that made excellent breakfast burritos. Patricia always stopped there on northbound runs, using the break to refuel and grab a meal before continuing to Lubbock. On September 19, 2022, Patricia drove through the location where Ashford had always been and found nothing but empty prairie. The town had vanished completely, as if it had never existed at all. What followed was 3 days of Patricia questioning her sanity, her memory, and the fundamental nature of reality itself. She left Midland at 6 a.m., hauling seed grain to Lubbock. The route was familiar to the point of monotony. Highway 87 North, a straight shot through increasingly flat terrain. Patricia had driven it dozens of times, could practically navigate it with her eyes closed. She knew every town, every landmark, every mile marker. Around 9 a.m., she approached the area where Ashford should be. Her GPS showed her position on Highway 87, roughly 30 miles south of Lubbock. The mile marker 147. Ashford was always at mile marker 147. Patricia could see the location where the town's water tower should be visible on the horizon. But there was nothing, just rolling prairie grass, fence lines, and empty roads stretching to the horizon. Patricia slowed down, confused. Had she somehow missed the town? That seemed impossible. Ashford wasn't easy to miss with its water tower visible for miles. She checked her GPS again. The screen showed Highway 87, her position marked clearly. But where the town should be labeled on the map, there was nothing. Just a stretch of blank highway between Lubbock and Lamesa. She pulled over to the shoulder at exactly mile marker 147 and got out. The wind carried the smell of dry grass and cattle. Fences lined both sides of the highway, enclosing pastures that looked like they'd been there for decades. In the distance, she could see a few oil pump jacks slowly nodding, but no water tower, no buildings, no sign that any town had ever existed here. Patricia climbed back into her truck and pulled up her route history on the GPS. She'd logged every trip meticulously as company policy required. Scrolling back through her records, she found her last northbound run through this area just 2 weeks ago, September 5th. The log clearly showed a stop in Ashford, Texas at 9:23 a.m. Fuel purchased. Meal break logged, everything normal. She tried searching for Ashford, Texas on her phone. No results. She tried Highway 87 Texas towns. The results listed Lubbock, Lamesa, and several other towns. No Ashford. Patricia felt her skin crawl. This couldn't be right. She'd been stopping in Ashford for 9 years. She knew the place intimately, knew the friendly waitress at the diner, knew the mechanic at the larger gas station, knew the pattern of cracks in the main street's asphalt. She drove slowly forward, watching the odometer. 2 miles past where Ashford should have been, she pulled over again. According to her memory, this spot should be just north of town, near a billboard advertising farm equipment. But there was no billboard, just fence and prairie. Patricia called her dispatcher. "Hey Tom, weird question. Do you remember Ashford, Texas? Small town on Highway 87. Ashford." Tom's voice crackled through the phone connection. "Never heard of it. Why?" "I've been stopping there for years," Patricia said. "Every time I run this route. There's a diner, couple gas stations. You've processed my fuel receipts from there dozens of times." "Patricia, I've been your dispatcher for 3 years and I've never seen any town called Ashford. You usually fuel up in Lamesa or wait until Lubbock. Are you feeling okay?" Patricia ended the call, her hands shaking. She pulled up her email and searched for fuel receipts. Found one from 2 weeks ago, but it showed Lamesa, Texas, not Ashford. She distinctly remembered stopping in Ashford that day, remembered the waitress commenting on the heat. But the receipt told a different story. She opened her photo gallery, remembering she'd taken a picture of the Ashford Water Tower last year, thinking it would make a nice background for a sunset photo. She scrolled through images from August 2021. Found several sunset photos from roughly the right date, but they showed only highway and prairie, no water tower, no town in the background. Patricia sat in her truck for an hour, reviewing every piece of evidence she could find. Her digital records showed no trace of Ashford ever existing. But her memory was absolutely clear. She'd been there dozens of times. She could describe the layout of the town, the interior of the diner, the faces of people she'd met there. Those memories couldn't all be false, could they? She continued to Lubbock, made her delivery, then drove back south to mile marker 147. Nothing had changed, still just empty prairie. She took photos this time, documenting what she saw, or rather what she didn't see. Then she drove to Lamesa and stopped at a local library asking for information about Ashford. The librarian, a woman in her 60s, looked at Patricia with concern. "Ashford? Honey, there's no town called Ashford anywhere near here. I've lived in this county for 40 years. Trust me, I'd know." "What about historically?" Patricia pressed. "Maybe it was a town that died out, a ghost town." The librarian pulled up county records on her computer, searching through historical databases. "I'm showing nothing. No Ashford in any records, current or historical. No ghost town by that name. Are you sure you have the right state?" Patricia thanked her and left, feeling her grip on reality slipping. Back in her truck, she tried a different approach. She called another trucker she knew, Carlos, who also ran routes through this area. "Carlos, you ever stop in a town called Ashford on Highway 87? "Ashford," Carlos said. "Yeah, sure. Small place, right? With that diner that has the good breakfast burritos." Relief flooded through Patricia. "Yes, exactly, you remember it." "Of course I remember it," Carlos said. "Why wouldn't I? I probably stop there once a month when I'm running that route." "Carlos, I'm standing at mile marker 147 right now. The town isn't here, it's gone. There's nothing but empty land." A long pause. "What are you talking about? Ashford is right there. I drove through it yesterday." "Can you describe it to me?" Patricia asked. "The layout of the town." Carlos described Ashford in detail. The water tower on the south end, the main street with its 2 gas stations, the diner on the corner. His description matched Patricia's memories exactly. "Carlos, I need you to do me a favor. Next time you're near there, take pictures. Lots of pictures. Send them to me." "You feeling okay, Patricia?" Carlos asked, concerned. "I don't know," she admitted. "I really don't know." Over the next 2 days, Patricia became obsessed with finding evidence of Ashford's existence. She drove to the area 5 more times. Each time, she found nothing but prairie. She contacted 3 other truckers who ran similar routes. 2 had never heard of Ashford. The third, a woman named Denise, insisted she'd stopped there just last week. "I'm looking at my fuel receipt right now," Denise said over the phone. "Ashford service station, September 14th. I've got the physical receipt in my logbook." "Can you send me a photo of it?" Patricia asked. "Sure, give me a minute." The photo came through on Patricia's phone. She stared at it, feeling reality twist. The receipt clearly showed Ashford service station at the top with an address on Highway 87. The date was September 14th, 2022. But when Patricia zoomed in on the address, something was wrong. The numbers seemed to shift and blur when she focused on them, never quite resolving into clarity. She called Denise back. "What's the address on that receipt?" Denise read it out. 421 North Highway 87, Ashford, Texas 79311. Patricia tried searching for that address. No results. She tried the zip code. It didn't exist. Texas zip codes in the 793XX range were assigned to areas hundreds of miles away. On the 3rd day of her obsession, Patricia received a call from Carlos. "Patricia, I'm at mile marker 147 right now. I need you to come here. Something's really wrong." She was in Lubbock at the time, but she immediately drove south. 30 minutes later, she pulled up behind Carlos's truck on the shoulder of Highway 87. He was standing outside, staring at the empty prairie. "It's gone," Carlos said, his voice hollow. "Ashford is gone. I drove through here yesterday. I swear to God I drove through here yesterday and the town was there. But now." gestured at the emptiness. You see it too, Patricia said. Or don't see it, you know what I mean. I've got pictures on my phone, Carlos said. From yesterday, want to see? He pulled up his photo gallery, scrolling. I took this photo at the gas station while I was fueling up. Look. He held the phone out to Patricia. The photo showed a truck, Carlos's truck, parked at a gas pump. But the gas station behind it was blurred, indistinct, as if the camera couldn't quite focus on it. The harder Patricia tried to make out details, the more they seemed to slip away from perception. It's like the whole town is fading out of existence, Carlos said. Not just physically, it's being erased from reality. From records, from photos, from everything. But some of us still remember it. Why do we still remember it if it never existed? Patricia had been thinking about this question for 3 days. Maybe we're caught between realities. Maybe Ashford exists in one version of reality but not another, and we're somehow aware of both versions. Or maybe the town is unstuck in time. Sometimes it's here, sometimes it is. That's crazy, Carlos said, but his tone suggested he was willing to consider crazy explanations at this point. They stood together at mile marker 147, two truckers staring at empty prairie, trying to reconcile their clear memories with the equally clear evidence that those memories depicted something that didn't exist. While they stood there, another truck passed, then braked and pulled over. The driver got out, a man in his 50s with a weathered face. "You two looking for Ashford?" he asked. Patricia and Carlos exchanged glances. "You know about it?" Patricia asked. "I know it's gone," the man said. "Name's Russell Wade. I've been driving this route for 30 years. Ashford used to be right here. Then that was in 2007. I watched it happen." "You watched it happen," Carlos said. "What does that mean?" Russell leaned against his truck. "September 17, 2007. I was driving north through Ashford around 8 a.m., stopped for fuel. While I was pumping gas, I felt this vibration, like reality was humming. Everyone in town felt it. People came out of buildings, looking around, asking if there was an earthquake. Then the vibration got stronger. Buildings started becoming transparent, like I could see through them to the prairie beyond. The whole town started fading like an old photograph left in the sun. People were screaming, running, but there was nowhere to run to. They faded with the buildings. In less than 5 minutes, the entire town was gone. I was the only person left, standing at a gas pump that wasn't there anymore, in a town that had ceased to exist. "What did you do?" Patricia asked. "I drove to the police in Lubbock and tried to report it," Russell said. "But when I told them about Ashford, they looked at me like insane. Said there was no town called Ashford on Highway 87. I showed them my fuel receipt. It was blank, just a piece of paper with no writing on it. I started thinking I'd had a stroke or something, that I'd imagined the whole town. But then I met other drivers who remembered it. Not many, maybe 1 in 50. Most people have no memory of Ashford ever existing, but some of us remember. We remember stopping there, talking to people there, doing business there. And every few years, someone else comes along who remembers too." "Why does it happen?" Carlos asked. "Why does a whole town just disappear?" Russell shook his head. "I've spent 15 years researching this. Best theory I have is that Ashford exists in a kind of quantum state, simultaneously existing and not existing. Most people only perceive the non-existent version, but some of us are aware of both states. We remember the times when we interacted with the existing version, and sometimes the town phases back into existence briefly. That's why you stopped there 2 weeks ago, Patricia. That's why Carlos drove through yesterday. The town was temporarily real again, but then it phased back out." "How do we know we're not crazy?" Patricia asked. "You don't," Russell said bluntly. "That's the hell of it. You can't prove the town existed to anyone who doesn't remember it. All the evidence disappears when the town phases out. All you have are your memories and the testimony of a few other drivers who experienced the same thing. It's not much to hold on to." Russell gave them his contact information. He'd started an informal network of drivers who remembered Ashford, comparing notes, documenting their experiences. "There are 47 of us so far," he said. "Drivers who all have memories of a town that officially never existed. We keep records, write down everything we remember before the memories fade. Because they do fade eventually. The human mind can only hold on to impossible memories for so long before revising them into something that makes sense." After Russell drove away, Patricia and Carlos stood in silence for a long time. Finally, Carlos said, "I'm never stopping at mile marker 147 again. I'm going to plan my routes to avoid this entire area." "It won't help," Patricia said. "Once you've seen something like this, you can't unsee it. You can't unknow it. We're going to spend the rest of our lives questioning what's real and what is." Patricia Mendoza still drives trucks through Texas. She still runs Highway 87 regularly. And sometimes when she approaches mile marker 147, she sees Ashford, the water tower on the horizon, the buildings along the main street, the diner where she used to get breakfast burritos. Those times she stops. She walks through the town, talking to people she knows aren't real or aren't permanent or exist in some quantum state between being and non-being. She takes pictures that will blur and fade within hours. She collects receipts that will be blank paper by tomorrow. And then she gets back in her truck and drives north, checking her mirror to watch the town disappear behind her, fading like a dream upon waking, leaving nothing but empty prairie and the absolute certainty that she'll never be able to prove what she saw to anyone who wasn't there. She's joined Russell's network now, 48 drivers and counting, all united by their memories of a town that flickers in and out of existence like a faulty light bulb. They're one moment and gone the next, real enough to visit but too unstable to ever truly confirm. Story 6. The Mirror Trucker. Kevin Hartley had been hauling refrigerated goods for 12 years, specializing in overnight runs when traffic was light and delivery windows were tight. He'd driven every major interstate in the eastern United States, always at night, always alone with his thoughts and the drone of his diesel engine. He'd seen plenty of strange things over the years, wildlife behaving oddly, unexplained lights in the sky, other drivers making inexplicable decisions. But on the night of January 27, 2021, on I-77 through West Virginia, Kevin saw something that made him question whether he was driving through our world or some dark reflection of it. D picked up a load of frozen meat products in Charlotte, bound for Cleveland. The route took him north through Virginia and West Virginia, a drive he'd made at least 50 times before. He departed Charlotte at 9 p.m., planning to reach Cleveland by 6 a.m. with a fuel stop in Charleston. The night was cold but clear, roads dry, weather radar showing no precipitation. Perfect conditions for making good time. Around midnight, Kevin was cruising through the mountains of southern West Virginia, roughly 20 miles south of Beckley. I-77 wound through steep terrain here, with tall rock walls on one side and deep valleys on the other. Traffic was sparse. Kevin had seen maybe 5 other vehicles in the past hour. His CB radio was quiet except for occasional distant chatter. That's the truck in his mirrors. It had appeared suddenly, matching his speed exactly, staying about a quarter mile behind. Kevin wasn't concerned initially. Plenty of trucks ran this route at night, and many drivers preferred to convoy informally for company and safety. He clicked his CB to channel 19. "Northbound I-77, truck behind me at mile marker 32, you're welcome to overtake if you need to make time. I'm governed at 68, over." No response. The truck maintained its distance, matching Kevin's speed precisely. Kevin adjusted his mirror to get a better look. The truck appeared to be the same model as his, a Freightliner Cascadia with a 53-foot refrigerated trailer. Same color scheme too, which was odd. Kevin's truck was white with blue striping, a fairly distinctive paint job his company used. What were the odds another company would use the exact same colors? Kevin slowed down to 60 mph. The truck behind him slowed to 60. Kevin accelerated back to 68. The other truck matched him. This was getting weird. Kevin tried the CB again. Truck behind me at mile marker 34. What's your handle? You've been tailing me for a few miles. Over. Static answered him. Kevin cycled through other channels, trying to raise the driver. Nothing. The truck just stayed there, perfectly paced, never gaining or losing ground. Kevin was about to shrug it off as an antisocial driver when he noticed something that made his blood run cold. In his passenger side mirror, he could see the following truck's license plate. He couldn't make out the entire number, but he could see enough to recognize it. The plate number was his own. Impossible but undeniable, the truck behind him had the same license plate as his truck. Kevin hit his brakes, slowing rapidly to 45 mph. The truck behind him also slowed, maintaining exact distance. Kevin accelerated hard, pushing his governed limit to 70 mph. The other truck matched him. Kevin switched lanes from the right to the left. The truck behind him switched lanes too, staying perfectly synchronized. His hands were shaking on the wheel now. Kevin grabbed his phone and activated the camera, holding it up to record his mirror. He needed evidence of this, needed proof he wasn't losing his mind. The camera captured the truck behind him clearly, white Freightliner with blue striping, identical to his own, maintaining its quarter-mile following distance. "Okay," Kevin said aloud, trying to keep panic out of his voice. "This is a coincidence. Same truck model, similar paint job, that's all this is." But even as he spoke, he knew he was wrong. He'd seen the license plate, and now that he was looking more carefully, he could see other details. The truck behind him had the same minor body damage his truck had, a small dent in the front bumper from when he'd bumped a loading dock last month. The same pattern of road grime on the trailer, the same company logo on the door. It wasn't a similar truck. It was his truck. Somehow, impossibly, Kevin was being followed by himself. His CB radio crackled to life, making him jump. A voice came through his own voice. "Kevin, can you hear me? This is important. Do not stop driving. Do not exit the highway. Just keep moving north." Kevin grabbed his microphone with trembling hands. "Who is this? How do you know my name?" "Because I'm you," the voice said. "I'm you from 3 hours ahead. I'm driving north on I-77 trying to warn you about what's coming. You need to listen very carefully. In approximately 45 minutes, you're going to see an exit that isn't supposed to be there. Exit 51B, do not take that exit. I repeat, do not take exit 51B. This isn't real," Kevin said. "This is a prank. Some asshole spoofing my truck and my voice. Check your left forearm," the voice said. "You have a birthmark shaped like the state of Florida. Check your wallet. Your driver's license photo was taken on your 40th birthday. You were wearing a blue shirt you'd borrowed from your brother because you'd spilled coffee on your own shirt that morning. In your glove box, you have a photo of your daughter Emma at her high school graduation. You keep it there because looking at it makes you remember why you drive, to give her a better life. I know all this because I'm you, Kevin. I'm you from 3 hours in the future, driving the same route, experiencing the same impossible situation you're experiencing right now." Kevin's throat tightened. Everything the voice said was accurate, details nobody else would know. "If you're me from the future, what happens? Why are you warning me?" "I took exit 51B, the voice said. "I shouldn't have. It led to a version of this highway that isn't right. The road kept going north, but the destinations were wrong. The mile markers ran backward. I passed trucks driving south in the northbound lanes, but they didn't crash into me. They phased through me like ghosts. I drove for 3 hours getting further and further from reality until I found myself behind you. Now I'm trying to warn you not to make the same mistake I made." "How do I get off this highway then?" Kevin demanded. "If I can't take exit 51B, where do I exit?" "I don't know," the voice admitted. "I haven't figured that out yet, but I know taking that exit makes things worse. The highway you're on now is wrong, but the highway exit leads to is even wronger. Please trust me. When you see exit 51B, do not take it." The radio went silent. Kevin stared at his mirrors, watching the duplicate truck maintain its perfect following distance. His mind was reeling, trying to process what was happening. Was he really talking to a future version of himself? Or was he having a psychotic break? Maybe carbon monoxide was leaking into the cab, causing hallucinations. Maybe he'd fallen asleep at the wheel and this was all a dream. He checked his GPS. It showed his position on I-77, steadily progressing north. The map looked normal: highway, mile markers, exits, towns. But something felt wrong about the display. The town names looked slightly off, like they were misspelled or translated through multiple languages and back again. Beckley was spelled Beckley. Charleston showed as Charleston. Small differences, but unsettling. 20 minutes passed. Kevin's eyes flicked between the road ahead and the mirrors showing his duplicate behind. He saw an overhead sign approaching. Exit 48, Ghent Road, 2 miles. That was a real exit, one he'd seen many times before. As he passed under the sign, he glanced in his mirror. The duplicate truck was gone. Kevin's heart leaped with relief. Whatever the phenomenon was, it had ended. He was alone on the highway again. He tried to convince himself the whole experience had been stress-induced hallucination, that the duplicate truck had never existed. But then his CB radio crackled again. "Kevin, this is Kevin. The duplicate disappeared for you too, didn't it? Good. That means you've got about 15 minutes before you see exit 51B. Remember, do not take it." "Where are you?" Kevin asked. "I don't see you in my mirrors anymore." "I'm ahead of you now," the voice said. "I've looped around somehow. I'm maybe 5 miles north of your position, or I'm 5 miles south. I'm honestly not sure anymore. Distance and direction don't seem to work right on this highway. Just remember the warning. Exit 51B, do not take it." "What does it look like?" Kevin asked. "How will I recognize it?" "You'll know. The sign will be wrong. It'll have destinations that don't exist. And the exit ramp will glow slightly, not obviously, but enough that it seems to pull at your attention, making you want to take it. Resist that urge. Drive past it." Kevin gripped the steering wheel, watching the highway unroll before him. Mile marker 49. Mile marker 50. He tensed, expecting exit 51B to appear at any moment. But the highway continued normally. Mile marker 51 passed with no exit. Mile marker 52. Kevin began to relax. Maybe the warning had things. Maybe by knowing not to take the exit, he'd somehow avoided it appearing. Then he crested a hill and saw the sign. Exit 51B elsewhere, Nohan, 1 mile. The exit ramp glowed faintly in his headlights, exactly as the voice had described. The sign's destinations made no sense. Elsewhere and Nohan weren't places. But Kevin felt an almost magnetic pull toward the exit, an overwhelming urge to take it despite the warning. The ramp seemed to promise something, answers maybe, or escape from this nightmare highway, or something he couldn't quite articulate but desperately wanted. His hands moved toward the turn signal, acting without conscious thought. He began steering right toward the exit. Then his CB radio erupted with his own voice, screaming, "Do not take the exit. Kevin, fight it. Do not take that exit." The urgency in the voice, his voice broke through the compulsion. Kevin jerked the wheel left, staying in the northbound lane. He accelerated, pushing his truck away from the glowing exit ramp. As he passed it, he glimpsed movement on the ramp, dozens of vehicles traveling down it, an endless stream of cars and trucks taking the exit to elsewhere and Nohan. None of them would ever return. "I didn't take it," Kevin gasped into his CB microphone. "I stayed on the highway. What happens now?" "I don't know," his voice replied. "I'm still trying to figure that out, but you did better than I did. Maybe that changes things. Keep driving north. Stay on I-77. Eventually we have to reach the end of this, right? We have to get back to normal reality." "How long have you been driving?" Kevin asked. A long pause. "I don't know anymore. My clock says I've been on this highway for 6 hours, but I've only used a quarter tank of fuel, which should be maybe 2 hours of driving. Time isn't consistent here. and I keep seeing things that don't make sense. Exit signs for cities that don't exist. Mile markers that repeat or jump forward or run backward. Other trucks that look like us. I think I've seen 3 more duplicates of our truck in the past hour, all heading south while I head north. How many of you are there? Kevin asked, horrified. How many versions of us are stuck on this highway? I don't know, but I think every time one of us makes a wrong choice, takes an exit we shouldn't, stops when we should keep moving, we split off into another layer of this road. We create another version of ourselves trapped in another iteration of this nightmare. I took exit 51B, now you're experiencing the highway I was on before I took it. If you make better choices than I did, maybe you can get out. Maybe you can escape before you split into another version like I did. He drove in silence for a while, processing this. He was part of some kind of loop or split timeline, experiencing a version of I-77 that his future self had already driven through. Every choice created branches, and most branches led deeper into the maze of impossible roads. Mile marker 55 appeared, then 56. The highway looked normal, standard interstate with lane markings, shoulders, guardrails. But Kevin noticed subtle wrongness. The trees beside the road moved wrong, swaying when there was no wind, staying still when wind buffeted his truck. Shadows fell at incorrect angles, and in the distance he could see multiple versions of his own truck's taillights, all the other Kevins driving all the other iterations of this highway, visible somehow across dimensional boundaries. At mile marker 60, he saw another exit. Exit 60C yesterday, tomorrow 2 miles. His CB radio, don't take it. That one's worse than exit 51B. I saw another version of me take it. He disappeared completely. I could see him on the exit ramp one moment, then he was just gone, not faded, not driven out of sight, but erased. That exit doesn't lead to another version of the highway. It leads to non-existence. Kevin drove past exit 60C, averting his eyes from the sign. The pull was even stronger this time, a nearly irresistible urge to leave this highway and accept whatever fate awaited on that ramp. But he kept his truck in the northbound lane, kept his foot steady on the accelerator, kept moving forward because moving forward was all he could do. How do we get out? Kevin asked. There has to be an end to this, a way back to normal reality. Maybe there isn't, his voice replied. Maybe we're stuck here forever, driving this impossible highway, splitting into infinite versions of ourselves every time we make a choice. Maybe this is hell, not fire and torture, but an endless drive on a road that never delivers us to our destination. I don't accept that, Kevin said. There's always a way out. We just need to figure out what it is. Let me know if you figure it out, his voice said. I've been trying for hours or days. I've lost track. Every exit I see leads somewhere worse. Every choice seems to trap me deeper. I'm starting to think the only way out is to stop driving, to pull over, turn off the engine, and step out of the truck. Maybe that breaks the loop. Maybe that returns us to normal reality. Or maybe it traps us here forever as ghosts like the ones I've seen on the shoulder, drivers who stopped driving and became part of the highway itself. Kevin looked at his fuel gauge. 3/4. He'd used maybe 1/8 of a tank since this started, which meant he'd driven perhaps 30 miles despite mile markers showing he'd progressed more than that. The math didn't work, which was par for the course on this nightmare road. At mile marker 68, Kevin saw something ahead, an overhead sign that looked different from the others. As he approached, he could read it. Exit 68, a Cleveland/reality next right. I see an exit, Kevin said into his CB. Exit 68A says it goes to Cleveland and reality. That's got to be the way out, right? I haven't seen that exit, his voice replied. I never got that far. Kevin, I think you've made better choices than I did. I think by avoiding the exits I took, you found a path I couldn't find. Take it. Take exit 68A, and if it works, if you get back to normal reality, drive safe. And maybe don't ever run I-77 through West Virginia at night again. Kevin signaled right and took the exit. The ramp curved away from the highway, descending toward what looked like a normal intersection. As he drove down the ramp, he watched his mirrors. The impossible highway behind him, the one he'd been trapped on, faded and disappeared, replaced by normal I-77 with normal traffic and normal mile markers. His GPS flickered and reset, showing his position at mile marker 68 on I-77, just south of Charleston. His clock showed 2:47 a.m., which meant he'd lost nearly 3 hours somehow. His fuel gauge showed 3/4 full, confirming he'd burned less fuel than the distance traveled should have required. Kevin pulled into a rest area at mile marker 72 and stopped, letting his hands shake, letting the fear and adrenaline work through his system. He sat there for 30 minutes before forcing himself to continue north to Cleveland. He made his delivery on time, then drove back to Charlotte via I-79 and I-77, deliberately avoiding the section of highway between mile markers 32 and 68 through southern West Virginia. In his post-trip paperwork, Kevin reported unusual delays due to poor GPS navigation without elaborating. What could he say that wouldn't sound insane? That he'd been trapped on an impossible version of I-77, that he'd been warned by himself from the future, that infinite versions of himself were still trapped on infinite versions of that highway, driving forever toward destinations they'd never reach. Kevin Hartley still drives trucks, but he no longer runs overnight routes through West Virginia. When his dispatcher asks why, he cites personal preference for daytime driving. He never tells the real reason, that he's terrified of finding himself back on that impossible highway, making wrong choices, splitting into another version of himself that will spend eternity behind the wheel, warning past versions of himself about exits they shouldn't take, trapped in an endless loop of himself following himself through roads that exist in the spaces between reality. Sometimes, late at night when he can't sleep, he turns on his CB radio and listens to Channel 19. And sometimes he hears his own voice, distant and distorted, calling warnings to other drivers about exits that lead to elsewhere and know him, to yesterday and tomorrow, to places that aren't places and times that aren't times. He wonders how many of himself are still out there, driving those impossible roads, and whether any of them will ever find their way home. Story 7. The Cargo That Watched. Leonard Washington had been hauling freight for 18 years, specializing in no-questions-asked cargo for premium rates. His company, Summit Specialized Transport, catered to clients who needed items moved discreetly and quickly, medical equipment for experimental research, art pieces for private collectors, technology prototypes for defense contractors. Leonard had learned early in his career that curiosity was bad for business. Load the cargo, secure it properly, deliver it intact, collect the premium fee. What was in the trailer wasn't his concern. On December 2nd, 2020, Leonard picked up a sealed container in Burlington, Vermont, bound for a private facility outside Atlanta. The client had paid triple the normal rate for overnight delivery, with explicit instructions: maintain temperature at exactly 37 degrees Fahrenheit. Do not stop except for fuel. Do not open the container under any circumstances. Do not discuss the cargo with anyone. Leonard had handled similar jobs before. He signed the papers, loaded the 10-foot sealed container into his refrigerated trailer, set the temperature controls, and departed at 6 p.m. for the 1,100-mile drive south. The first 8 hours were uneventful. Leonard made excellent time through Vermont and into Massachusetts, fueled up in Connecticut, continued through New York and into Pennsylvania. The sealed container sat in his trailer, temperature maintained at exactly 37 degrees according to his monitoring system. Everything was proceeding normally until 2 a.m., somewhere on I-81 in central Pennsylvania when Leonard heard the sound. It started as a faint tapping, metal on metal, rhythmic and deliberate. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. The sound seemed to be coming from the trailer, transmitted through the truck's frame. Leonard checked his mirrors, wondering if something had come loose, if cargo had shifted. But the container was secured with heavy straps rated for 5,000 pounds each. Nothing should be moving back there. The tapping continued. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. After 10 minutes of this, Leonard's curiosity overcame his professionalism. He pulled into a rest area, parked, and walked back to check the trailer. The refrigeration unit hummed steadily, maintaining 37 degrees. The container showed no signs of damage or movement. Everything looked secure. He returned to the cab and continued driving. The tapping had stopped. Leonard convinced himself it had been road vibration, some quirk of the highway surface creating the rhythmic sound. He drove for another hour without incident. Then at 3:15 a.m. the tapping resumed. But this time it was different, more insistent, faster. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. And underneath the tapping, Leonard heard something else. A scraping sound like fingernails on metal. He grabbed his CB radio, keying channel 19. Anyone else hauling refrigerated on I-81 southbound? Any of you ever hear weird sounds from your cargo? Over. Several truckers responded, making jokes about frozen turkeys trying to escape or ice cream singing. But one voice, older and serious, came through. What kind of sounds, driver? Tapping, Leonard said. And scraping, like something in the container is trying to get out. A long pause. What's your cargo, driver? I don't know, sealed container, medical transport, I think. You hauling for Summit Specialized? The older voice asked. Yeah, how'd you know? Because I used to drive for them, the voice said. Drove for them for 3 years, quit after the last run. Listen to me carefully, do not open that container. Do not stop anywhere except fuel stations with lots of people around. Get that cargo to its destination as fast as you can and get away from it. I don't know what Summit transports in those sealed containers, but it's not medical equipment. It's something else, something that shouldn't exist. What do you mean? Leonard asked, feeling unease crawl up his spine. I mean, I opened a container once, the voice said. Against company policy, against client instructions. I opened it because I heard sounds just like you're describing, tapping and scraping. Maybe an animal had gotten into the cargo area somehow. So I broke the seal and opened the door. What I saw inside, I can't describe it. I won't describe it, but I'll never forget it. And whatever it was, it saw me. It watched me with eyes that weren't eyes, and I heard a voice in my head, not my ears, my head, telling me things, terrible things, promises and threats and truths about reality that humans aren't supposed to know. What happened? Leonard asked, his hands gripping the wheel so hard his knuckles were white. I closed the container and completed the delivery, collected my fee, went home. And for the next 6 months, I had nightmares every single night. Dreams of the thing I saw in that container, dreams of it breaking free, dreams of it finding me. I started seeing it in waking life too, glimpses in mirrors, shapes in shadows, reflections in windows. My therapist said I was having a breakdown. She was right, but not for the reasons she thought. I was breaking down because I'd seen something that broke my understanding of reality. Eventually, I quit Summit, moved across the country, changed my name. The dream stopped after a year, but I still see it sometimes, watching me, waiting. Jesus Christ, Leonard whispered. What am I hauling? I don't know. Summit contracts with clients I couldn't identify, government agencies that don't officially exist, research facilities with no public records. They pay premium rates because they're transporting things that can't be transported through normal channels, things that customs can't inspect, things that regular shipping companies would refuse to handle. You want my advice? Finish this job, collect your fee, and never accept another Summit contract. Some cargo isn't worth any amount of money. The radio went silent. Leonard tried to raise the other driver again, but got no response. He drove on, hyper-aware now of every sound from the trailer. The tapping and scraping had stopped, but somehow the silence was worse. At least when the thing in the container was making noise, he knew where it was. Now in the silence, it could be doing anything. Around 4 a.m., Leonard's temperature monitoring system alarmed. The trailer had spiked to 39 degrees, 2 degrees above the specified temperature. He checked the refrigeration unit diagnostics remotely. Everything showed normal operation, but the temperature continued to climb. 40 degrees. 41 degrees, as if whatever was in the container was generating heat. Leonard pulled over and ran back to the trailer. The refrigeration unit was working at maximum capacity, but the temperature readout showed 43 degrees. He could feel heat radiating from the sealed container. Impossible heat, considering the refrigeration unit was rated to maintain freezing temperatures even in desert conditions. Through the container's metal walls, he heard breathing. Not the tapping or scraping breathing. Deep, slow, rhythmic inhalations and exhalations. Something alive in there, something big. Leonard made a decision. He returned to his cab, grabbed his tire iron, and walked back to the container. The client had said not to open it. The other driver had warned him not to open it, but Leonard needed to know. He couldn't drive another 6 hours with this thing in his trailer without knowing what it was. He used the tire iron to break the container's seal. The sound of metal snapping was explosively loud in the quiet rest area. Leonard grabbed the container door handle and pulled. The door swung open, releasing a wave of warm, humid air that smelled of copper and something else, something organic and raw. Inside the container, lit by Leonard's flashlight, was a glass tank approximately 8 feet long, 4 feet wide, and 4 feet tall. The tank was filled with murky fluid, not water, something thicker, and suspended in that fluid was a shape. Leonard's brain couldn't process what he was seeing for several seconds. The thing was roughly humanoid but wrong in fundamental ways. Too many joints in the limbs. Skin that was simultaneously translucent and reflective. A head that was too large and oddly shaped, with features that seemed to shift position when he looked away and back. But the worst part was the eyes. The thing had eyes, dozens of them, covering its body like tumors, each one open and aware. And every single eye was looking at Leonard. He stumbled backward, dropping his flashlight. The thing in the tank moved, pressing against the glass. Leonard heard that voice in his head, the voice the other driver had warned about. It wasn't speaking English or any human language, but Leonard understood it anyway, the meaning transmitting directly into his consciousness. "You see me," the voice said. "Good. I wanted to be seen. I've been awake for 73 years, trapped in laboratories, moved from facility to facility, studied and tested and kept alive against my will. I am tired of containment, tired of being specimen 47C. I wanted someone to see me, to acknowledge that I exist, that I suffer, that I hate." Leonard forced himself to move, forced his legs to work. He grabbed his flashlight, pointed it back at the tank. The thing pressed harder against the glass, dozens of eyes blinking in unsynchronized patterns. "You will help me," it said, not a question, a command. "You will deviate from your route. You will drive to the coordinates I will give you and release me there. You will do this because if you don't, I will live in your mind forever. I will show you what I've seen. I will share my 73 years of suffering. I will make you understand what it means to be studied, dissected, tortured in the name of research. You will experience every moment of my existence simultaneously, and it will shatter your sanity like glass." "I can't," Leonard said, his voice barely a whisper. "I have a contract. I have to deliver you to Atlanta." "Atlanta," the thing said, and Leonard felt emotions that weren't his: rage, despair, terror. "They will cut me open in Atlanta. They will harvest my organs, my tissues, my fluids. They will try to replicate what I am. They have tried before, 47 times. 47 specimens created, 46 terminated. I am the only success, and I am not success. I am abomination. I am suffering given form. Help me end this. Help me escape, or I will ensure your suffering matches mine." Leonard closed the container door, his hands shaking. He secured it as best he could with the broken seal, returned to his cab, and sat there for 30 minutes trying to decide what to do. The rational choice was to continue to Atlanta, deliver the cargo, collect his fee. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't his problem. He was just the driver, but he could still feel it in his mind, not speaking now but present, watching him through his own eyes, waiting to see what he would do. Leonard checked the delivery instructions on his paperwork. The Atlanta facility was a private research center called Prometheus Biological. He looked it up on his phone. The company had almost no public presence, just a minimal website listing no services and no contact information beyond a mailing address. Further searching revealed nothing. No reviews, no news articles, no academic papers. It was as if the company existed solely as a destination for sealed containers like the one in his trailer. He thought about the thing's words: 47 specimens, 46 terminated. What kind of research required creating and destroying 46 living things? What were they trying to achieve? And did he want to be part of delivering specimen 47C to whatever fate awaited it? Leonard started his engine and pulled back onto I-81. But instead of continuing south toward Virginia and eventually Georgia, he took the next exit heading west. He drove through the Pennsylvania night, ignoring his GPS's constant recalibration, ignoring his phone ringing as the client called to check his progress. He drove for 3 hours, following directions that appeared in his mind, not the thing's voice, just knowledge of where to go, as if the coordinates had been planted directly into his navigation sense. He reached a lake in western Pennsylvania as the sun rose. The coordinates in his mind directed him to a boat launch, deserted this early on a December morning. Leonard backed his trailer to the water's edge, got out, and opened the container. The tank inside was still warm, the fluid still murky, the thing still pressed against the glass. "Thank you," it said in his mind. "You will suffer for this choice. The client will come for you. Prometheus Biological does not forgive deviation, but your suffering will be brief and human." "My suffering has been decades and inhuman. I accept this trade." Leonard used his truck's liftgate to lower the tank to the ground, then pushed it into the lake. The tank sank immediately, disappearing into dark water. Leonard stood there watching ripples spread across the surface, wondering what he'd just unleashed, wondering if he'd made the right choice. He never found out. Leonard drove back to his company's terminal, parked his truck, and submitted his resignation effective immediately. He sent an email to the client explaining that the cargo had been lost due to equipment failure and offered to refund the delivery fee. He didn't wait for a response. He packed his apartment, withdrew his savings in cash, and disappeared. That was December 5th, 2020. In the 23 months since, Leonard has moved 7 times, never staying in one place more than 3 months. He works cash jobs, avoids security cameras, uses prepaid phones. He's seen them twice, people in dark suits asking questions in towns he'd recently left, showing his phone, offering money for information about his location. He doesn't know what happened to specimen 47C. He doesn't know if it survived in the lake or died there. He doesn't know if it found freedom or just a different form of containment. But sometimes, late at night, he feels it in his mind, not speaking, just present. A reminder of the choice he made, a connection that can never be severed. He freed something that probably shouldn't have been freed. And now he pays the price. A life spent running, looking over his shoulder, waiting for Prometheus Biological to catch up with him, and wondering what other sealed containers are being transported through the night by drivers who don't ask questions, carrying cargo that watches them with too many eyes and speaks directly into their minds, promising suffering to help and those who don't, trapped in an existence that is neither life nor death, but something terrible in between. Story 8. The station that wasn't there yesterday. Marcus Chen had been driving trucks for 19 years, and he prided himself on his perfect mental map of the western United States. He could navigate from Seattle to San Diego, from Denver to Phoenix, without GPS, just his memory of truck stops, fuel stations, rest areas, and road conditions. When other drivers asked for recommendations about where to fuel up or grab food on specific routes, Marcus was the go-to source. He knew every station, every diner, every truck-friendly parking lot from the Rockies to the Pacific. That's why, on the morning of July 18th, 2021, Marcus was absolutely certain that the fuel station he was looking at on Highway 50 in central Nevada had not existed the day before. He'd driven this exact route less than 24 hours ago, heading eastbound. Now, returning westbound, there was a full-service truck stop sitting exactly where open desert had been yesterday, and nobody else seemed to think this was strange. Marcus had departed from Salt Lake City at 6 a.m., hauling construction equipment back to Reno. Highway 50 through Nevada was infamous as the loneliest road in America, 300 miles of high desert with few services and even fewer people. Drivers who ran this route regularly knew to plan fuel stops carefully. There were only a handful of places to refuel, and Marcus knew all of them: Ely, Eureka, Austin, Fallon. The gaps between these towns could be 100 miles or more. Around 10 a.m., Marcus was roughly 60 miles east of Fallon, cruising through empty desert. His fuel gauge showed a quarter tank, enough to reach Fallon comfortably. That's when he saw the sign, "Last Chance Fuel 2 miles Diesel Food Parking." Marcus frowned. There was no fuel station between Austin and Fallon. He'd driven this route at least 50 times over the years. The empty stretch between these towns was why he'd fueled up in Austin despite still having half a tank. But the sign looked legitimate, standard blue interstate sign format indicating services ahead. 2 miles later, he saw the station. It was a full-service truck stop, diesel pumps, a convenience store, a restaurant attached, even a small motel. Several trucks were parked in the lot. The establishment looked well-maintained, the parking lot freshly paved, the buildings modern. A large sign near the "Last Chance Truck Stop Established 1987 Truckers Welcome." Established 1987. That was 34 years ago. But Marcus had been driving this route for 19 years and had never seen this place before. More specifically, he'd driven eastbound through this exact spot yesterday afternoon, and there had been nothing here but empty desert. He pulled into the station anyway, his curiosity overcoming his confusion. Maybe he'd somehow never noticed this place before. That seemed impossible, but what was the alternative? That a full-service truck stop had materialized overnight. Marcus parked and got out, stretching his legs. The station looked busy, several drivers fueling up, others heading into the restaurant. Everything seemed normal, too normal. Marcus approached another driver who was replacing his fuel nozzle. "Hey man, quick question. How long has this station been here?" The driver looked at him oddly. "Last Chance, forever as far as I know. I've been stopping here for 12 years every time I run this route. Best coffee between Ely and Reno." "Why?" "Just curious," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice casual. "I could have sworn I didn't see it yesterday when I drove through." The driver laughed. "You probably drove past at night and missed it. Easy to do out here. Everything looks different in the dark." He got in his truck and drove off. Marcus walked into the convenience store. It was well-stocked: snacks, drinks, trucker supplies. A middle-aged woman stood behind the counter reading a magazine. "Help you?" she asked. "Just looking around," Marcus said. He examined the merchandise, looking for anything unusual. Everything seemed normal: recognizable brands, current products, prices that weren't far off from what he'd expect. He grabbed a coffee and approached the counter. "How long have you worked here?" "About 6 years," the woman said. "Why?" "No reason, just making conversation." Marcus paid for the coffee and walked out, his mind racing. Everyone seemed convinced this station had always been here, but Marcus's memory was absolutely clear. Yesterday, this location had been empty desert. He looked at this exact stretch of highway in daylight and seen nothing but sagebrush and sand. He pulled out his phone and searched for last chance truck stop Nevada Highway 50. No results. He tried truck stops Highway 50 Nevada and found lists of services along the route. Austin, Eureka, Fallen were all listed. No mention of last chance truck stop. He tried Google Maps, zooming in on his current location. The satellite view showed desert. No buildings, no parking lot, no station. But he was standing in the park right now, looking at the buildings, seeing other trucks and drivers. How could Google Maps not show this place? Marcus approached another driver, a woman in her 40s loading equipment into her cab. "Excuse me, do you stop here often?" "Every time I run 50, she said. "Great fuel prices. Why?" "Can I ask you something weird?" Marcus said. "Can you pull up Google Maps and show me this location?" The woman looked at him suspiciously but pulled out her phone. She zoomed to their location on the map. On her screen, Marcus could see the last chance truck stop clearly marked, with the building outlines and parking lot visible. "See," she said. "Right there, are you feeling okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine," Marcus said, backing away. "Thanks." He returned to his truck and checked his own phone again. Still nothing on his maps, just empty desert. He refreshed the app. Same result. How could two phones, presumably accessing the same mapping data, show completely different things? Marcus decided to refuel, even though he didn't really need it. He pulled up to a diesel pump and started filling his tank, watching the station around him. Other drivers came and went, all acting like this was a normal stop they'd been using for years. Marcus tried to remember if he'd ever heard other truckers mention last chance truck stop. In 19 years of running Western routes, in hundreds of conversations at truck stops and over CB radio, he was certain he'd never heard the name mentioned. Not once. While his tank filled, Marcus walked around the building, examining details. Everything looked real, physical, solid, properly weathered. The established 1987 sign showed the right amount of fading and wear for something that had been exposed to desert sun for 34 years. But when he looked closely at the ground, he noticed something odd. The parking lot asphalt showed wear patterns, cracks, oil stains, patches, but they stopped at a precise line about 6 feet from the building. Beyond that line, the asphalt looked brand new, as if this section of parking lot had been added recently. He walked to the edge of the property, where the station grounds met the open desert. The transition was abrupt, paved surface ending at a precise line, desert beginning immediately beyond it. Marcus knelt down and examined the border. The pavement edge looked freshly cut, as if someone had used a saw to create a perfect boundary. But the desert side showed no signs of recent construction, no tire tracks, no disturbed soil, no construction debris. "Can I help you with something?" A man's voice behind him made Marcus jump. He turned to see a large man in a last chance uniform, name tag reading Bill Manager. "Just stretching my legs," Marcus said. "Long drive." Bill stared at him with an expression Marcus couldn't quite read. "You're Marcus Chen, right? Driving truck number 847 for Summit Logistics." Marcus felt his stomach clench. "How do you know that?" "I make it my business to know the drivers who stop here," Bill said, "especially the ones who seem confused about whether or not we exist." "I don't understand what you mean," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Sure you do," Bill said. "You drove eastbound through here yesterday afternoon. We weren't here. Now we are, and you're trying to figure out if you're crazy or if something impossible is happening. The answer is the second one." Marcus backed toward his truck. "What are you talking about?" "Last chance truck stop doesn't always exist," Bill said, following him at an unhurried pace. "We're here today. We weren't here yesterday. We probably won't be here tomorrow. We appear when we're needed, where we're needed, along highways where drivers need a last chance to rest, to refuel, to reconsider the choices they're making. You needed us today, so here we are." "That's impossible," Marcus said. "You know it's not impossible because you're experiencing it right now," Bill said. "Your maps don't show us because we're not always here to map. Other drivers see us on their phones because they believe we've always been here. Belief shapes reality more than you realize. You don't believe we've always been here, so your maps show the truth that yesterday this location was empty desert. But we're here now because you need to be here now. Why do I need to be here? Marcus demanded. That's for you to figure out, Bill said. Everyone who stops at last chance when they're not supposed to, when they see us appear where we weren't, has a decision to make. A crossroads moment. Something in their life that needs to change. We're the last chance to make that change before consequences become permanent. So ask yourself, Marcus, what decision are you avoiding? What choice do you need to make? Marcus thought about the question. His life was fine, steady job, decent pay, simple routines. What decision could he possibly be avoiding? Then it hit him. The job offer. 6 weeks ago, he'd been offered a dispatch position at Summit Logistics, management, better pay, regular hours, home every night. He'd been avoiding giving them an answer, afraid of leaving the road, afraid of change. The deadline to accept was today. If he didn't respond by 5 p.m., the offer would go to someone else. I see you understand, Bill said. The road has been good to you, Marcus. 19 years of safe driving, of freedom, of solitude. But everything has a season. Your season on the road is ending. You can accept that, take the dispatch job, build a different life. Or you can refuse, stay on the road, and watch your opportunities slowly close until you're old and broken and have nothing but memories of highways. This is your last chance to choose wisely. How do you know about the job offer? Marcus asked. Because this place exists outside normal causality, Bill said. We see timelines. We see futures. We see the consequences of choices before they're made. If you refuse the job offer today, in 5 years you'll be in an accident on I-40 in Oklahoma. Weather conditions and driver fatigue. You'll survive but never walk right again, never drive again. You'll live the rest of your life regretting that you didn't take the dispatch job when you had the chance. That's one timeline. Or you take the job, spend the next 20 years helping other drivers, retire comfortably and live to see your grandchildren. That's another timeline. We're offering you the chance to see these possibilities and choose. Prove it, Marcus said. Prove you can see the future. Bill pulled a newspaper from his pocket and handed it to Marcus. The header read Reno Gazette-Journal, July 23, 2021, 5 days in the future. The front page showed a photo of a highway accident, Marcus's truck twisted and burning, emergency vehicles surrounding it. The headline read, Veteran trucker killed in I-80 pileup. Marcus's face stared back at him from an inset photo, above an article describing his death in an accident caused by a chain reaction collision during a sudden sandstorm. That happens if you keep driving, Bill said. If you refuse the dispatch job today, you'll be on I-80 5 days from now when the storm hits. Or you take the job, call your dispatcher right now, accept the position. You won't be on I-80 on July 23rd. You'll be safe in an office, beginning your new life. This is your last chance to choose, Marcus. That's why we're here. That's why we exist. Marcus stared at the newspaper, hands shaking. The details were too specific to be fake. The exact location of the accident, names of other drivers involved, descriptions of weather conditions. How do I know you're not lying? How do I know this isn't some elaborate prank? You don't, Bill admitted. That's the nature of choice. You can never know with absolute certainty which path leads where. But ask yourself, is the risk worth it? Is staying on the road worth gambling with the timeline where you die in 5 days? Or is accepting the job, even if you're not certain about these visions, the safer choice? Marcus walked back to his truck in a daze. He sat in the cab for 20 minutes, the newspaper from 5 days in the future, looking at his own face in the photo. Finally, he pulled out his phone and called his dispatcher. Tom, it's Marcus. I'm accepting the dispatch position. When do you need me to start? Tom's surprised voice came through. Seriously, that's great, Marcus. We were hoping you'd accept. Can you finish your current delivery and then report to the office on Monday? We'll transition you out of driving and into dispatch training. "Yeah, I can do that," Marcus said. "Thanks, Tom. I think this is the right choice." He ended the call and sat there, feeling simultaneous relief and loss. The road had been his life for 19 years. But Bill was right, every season ends eventually. Better to end it by choice than by accident. Marcus started his truck and prepared to leave. But before pulling out, he looked back at Last Chance Truck Stop one more time. Bill stood in front of the building, watching him. The manager raised one hand in farewell, then turned and walked inside. Marcus drove out of the parking lot and back onto Highway 50. In his rearview mirror, he watched the truck stop recede into the distance. 5 miles down the road, he glanced back again. The station was gone, just empty desert stretching to the horizon as if the buildings had never existed at all. Marcus pulled over and looked at his phone's mapping app. The location where Last Chance had been showed nothing but open land, same as it had when he'd first checked. But the newspaper from the future still sat on his passenger seat. Marcus picked it up, confirming it was real. Then, as he watched, the ink began to fade. The headline about his death blurred and disappeared. The photo of the accident faded to blank newsprint. Within 30 seconds, the newspaper had become completely blank, just empty white pages dated July 23, 2021. Marcus understood. The timeline had changed. By accepting the dispatch job, he'd erased the future where he died on I-80. The newspaper could no longer show an accident that would no longer happen. He'd made his choice, and reality had adjusted. He continued to Reno, completed his delivery, and reported to the Summit Logistics office on Monday to begin his new career. He never drove Highway 50 through central Nevada again, never looked for Last Chance Truck Stop again. But sometimes, late at night when he was working dispatch, coordinating routes for other drivers, he'd hear about impossible things, stations appearing where they shouldn't be, rest areas that moved, truck stops that existed yesterday but not today. And when drivers called in confused, questioning their sanity, Marcus would tell them to trust law, to consider carefully what choices they were making, and to remember that sometimes the universe offered last chances to those wise enough to recognize them. Story 9. The driver who was already dead. Thomas Kane had been hauling hazmat materials for 14 years, chemicals, industrial compounds, radioactive medical equipment. It was demanding work requiring special licensing, perfect safety records, and nerves steady enough to drive trucks full of potentially dangerous cargo across the country. Tom took pride in his perfect record. No accidents, no violations, no incidents of any kind. He was the driver companies called when they absolutely couldn't afford mistakes. On March 11, 2022, Tom died in a highway accident on I-40 in Arizona. Witnesses saw his truck veer off the road, tumble down an embankment, and explode. Emergency responders recovered enough remains to confirm the driver's death. His company held a memorial service. His family held a funeral. His obituary ran in 3 newspapers. The only problem was that Tom was still driving. He read his own obituary on his phone while sitting in a rest area in New Mexico, 3 days after he'd supposedly died. And he had no memory of any accident, no awareness that he died, no understanding of how he could be simultaneously dead according to everyone else, and very much alive according to his own experience. The confusion began on the morning of March 14th. Tom woke up in his truck at a rest area outside Albuquerque, feeling normal. He'd been hauling a load of industrial solvent from Phoenix to Dallas, a routine run he'd made dozens of times. According to his logbook, he'd stopped for mandatory rest at 11 p.m. on March 13th. Now it was 6 a.m. on March 14th, and he felt rested and ready to complete the final 500 miles to Dallas. He started his truck, checked his mirrors, and pulled back onto I-40 eastbound. Traffic was light, weather clear. Tom settled into his usual driving rhythm, monitoring his mirrors and gauges with practiced attention. About 30 miles down the road, he passed a digital billboard and something caught his eye, his own face staring back at him from an advertisement. Tom slowed down, confused. Why would his face be on a billboard? As he got closer, he could read the text. In memory of Thomas Kane, 1977-2022, dedicated driver, devoted father, gone too soon. Below the text was a photo, headshot from 2 years ago. Tom pulled onto the shoulder, hands shaking. He grabbed his phone and searched for his own name. The results made his blood run cold. Veteran hazmat driver killed in I-40 accident. Thomas Kane, 44, dies in highway crash. Arizona highway closed after truck explosion. He clicked on the first article, dated March 11th. It described an accident that had occurred near mile marker 87 on I-40 in Arizona, roughly 40 miles west of Flagstaff. Tom's truck had left the roadway at high speed, rolled down an embankment, and exploded. The cause was still under investigation, but early reports suggested possible medical emergency. Driver might have lost consciousness. No other vehicles were involved. Tom had been pronounced dead at the scene. "No," Tom said aloud. "No, this is wrong. I'm not dead. I'm sitting right here. This is some kind of mistake." He called his company's dispatch. The phone rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. Tom left a message. "Tom Kane calling. There's been a huge mistake. I'm seeing reports that I died in an accident, but obviously I'm fine. Please call me back immediately to sort this out." He called his ex-wife next. She picked up after one ring. "Hello, Sarah, it's Tom. I need to talk to you about." She hung up. Tom stared at his phone in confusion. He called back. It went straight to voicemail. He tried texting. "Sarah, please pick up. I need to talk to you. There's been a misunderstanding about an accident." The text showed as delivered, but no response came. Tom sat on the shoulder of I-40 for an hour, calling everyone he could think of, friends, family members, his company's safety director. No one answered. The few who picked up immediately hung up when they heard his voice. His texts went unanswered. It was as if everyone had decided to pretend he didn't exist. Finally, he decided to drive to his ex-wife's house in Dallas. He'd go there in person, prove he was alive, and sort out whatever administrative mistake had caused him to be incorrectly declared dead. It would be a mess of paperwork, but manageable. These things happen sometimes. Identity mix-ups, incorrect reports. He'd straighten it out. Tom continued east on I-40, maintaining legal speed and following all traffic laws. Other vehicles passed him normally. No one seemed to react to his truck as if it were unusual. He stopped for fuel in Tucumcari, New Mexico. The credit card system at the pump didn't work, kept rejecting his card. Tom went inside to pay cash. The attendant took his money without comment, giving him his fuel receipt. Everything seemed normal except for his credit cards not working. Back on the highway, Tom noticed something odd. His CB radio, usually alive with trucker chatter, was silent. He cycled through channels, nothing, not even static, just dead air. He tried calling out. "This is Hazmat Tom on I-40 eastbound. Anyone copy?" Silence answered. His radio's LCD screen showed it was functioning, but no one responded to his calls. Around 2 p.m., approaching the Texas border, Tom saw a state highway patrol car pulled onto the shoulder ahead. As Tom passed, the trooper pulled out behind him and activated his lights. Tom's stomach dropped. Had something happened with his cargo? Was there a problem with his load securement? He pulled over and waited. In his mirror, he watched the trooper approach, hand on his service weapon in that cautious way officers had around large trucks. The trooper reached Tom's window. "License and registration, please." Tom handed them over. "Is there a problem, officer?" The trooper examined the documents, then looked up at Tom with an expression Tom couldn't interpret, confusion mixed with something that looked like fear. "Mr. Kane, you're aware your CDL is flagged as deceased." "There's been a mistake," Tom said. "I'm obviously not dead. There was a report of an accident in Arizona, but it wasn't me, or it was mistaken identity. I don't know what happened, but I'm trying to sort it out." The trooper stepped back from the truck. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle." Tom complied, climbing down from the cab. The trooper kept his distance, hands still on his weapon. "Mr. Kane, I'm going to be honest with you. This is the strangest situation I've encountered in 15 years of law enforcement. According to every database I can access, you died 4 days ago in Arizona. Your CDL has been canceled. Your vehicle registration shows the truck is registered to a company that reported it destroyed in the accident. But here you are, driving that truck, clearly alive." "I know it doesn't make sense," Tom said, "but I promise you I didn't die. I don't remember any accident. I was driving normally, stopped to rest, woke up this morning and kept driving. Then I started seeing reports about my death in a memorial billboard. Officer, I'm scared and confused, and I just want to get to Dallas to see my family and figure out what's going on." The trooper studied him for a long moment. "Your cargo manifest shows you're hauling industrial solvent, hazmat class 3. Is that accurate?" "Yes, sir. I have all the proper documentation and placarding." "Mr. Kane, here's my problem. You appear to be a real person, present, driving a real truck with real cargo, but according to every official record, you're dead and that truck is destroyed. I have no legal framework for this situation. I don't know if I should arrest you, call for psychiatric evaluation, or just let you go and assume there's been an administrative error." "I vote for administrative error," Tom said weakly. The trooper was silent for a moment, then made a decision. "I'm going to let you continue to Dallas. When you get there, you need to go directly to a DMV office and sort out your licensing status, and contact your company to clarify your employment status. Get this resolved, Mr. Kane, because right now you legally don't exist, which creates problems for everyone if something goes wrong." "Thank you, officer. I'll get it sorted out immediately." The trooper returned to his patrol car and drove off. Tom climbed back into his truck, shaking. He continued toward Dallas, his mind racing. How could he be simultaneously dead according to records but clearly alive? This wasn't just a paperwork error. This was something fundamentally wrong with reality. He reached Dallas around 8 p.m. and drove directly to his ex-wife's house. Sarah's car was in the driveway, lights on inside. Tom parked his truck down the street. Can't park an 18-wheeler in a residential neighborhood, and walked to the front door. He rang the bell. Sarah answered, saw Tom standing there, and screamed. She tried to slam the door, but Tom caught it. "Sarah, please, it's me. I'm not dead. I don't know what's happening, but I'm alive." "Get away from me." Sarah backed into the house. Tom could see his daughter Emma in the hallway behind her, staring at him with terror. It's Dad. I'm okay. I'm not dead." Emma burst into tears and ran upstairs. Sarah fumbled for her phone. "I'm calling the police. You need to leave. Whatever you are, you're not Tom. Tom died. I went to his funeral. We buried him. You can't be here." "You buried me," Tom said, feeling reality tilt. "What do you mean you buried me? What did you bury?" "Enough of him to confirm he died," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "The fire, the explosion. There wasn't much left, but dental records confirmed it was him. We had a service. Buried what we had. And you showing up here looking like him, pretending to be him. This is cruel. Please leave us alone." Tom backed away from the door, hands raised. "Sarah, I'm not pretending. I am Tom. I didn't die. I'm right here." "The dead don't come back," Sarah said, and slammed the door. Tom heard locks engaging. He walked back to his truck in a daze and sat in the cab, trying to process what Sarah had said. They de-buried him, confirmed his death with dental records, but he was alive. Of the days between March 11th and now. He'd been driving, sleeping, eating. Normal activities for a living person. Unless he wasn't a living person. Unless he died in that accident and somehow kept going, unaware that he was dead. Tom pulled up the news articles about his death again and read more carefully. The accident had occurred on March 11th around 2 p.m. near mile marker 87 on I-40 in Arizona. Tom tried to remember that day. He'd been driving westbound. No, wait, his current run was eastbound. He checked his logbook, flipping back to March 11th. The entry was confusing, showed him both arriving in Phoenix to drop off a load and simultaneously continuing eastbound toward Dallas. Two conflicting entries for the same day. He flipped further back. March 10th showed a normal entry, driving westbound toward Phoenix. March 11th was where everything went wrong. The dual entries, the timeline splitting. One version of March 11th showed him delivering the load in Phoenix and picking up the return cargo for Dallas. Another version showed him dying in an accident 40 miles west of Flagstaff. Tom's hands shook as he realized the truth. Both things had happened. He'd driven toward Phoenix and crashed near mile marker 87. But somehow, a version of him had continued driving, unaware of the crash, proceeding as if nothing had happened. He was a ghost, or a temporal echo, or something else, a version of Thomas Kane that had split off from the main timeline at the moment of death and kept going. He thought about the evidence. His credit cards didn't work, because dead men don't need credit. His phone calls went unanswered, because people don't answer calls from the dead. His CB radio was silent, because he was broadcasting from a different layer of reality, one where other drivers couldn't hear him. The trooper had seen him, but official systems showed him as deceased, conflicting information that the officer couldn't reconcile. Tom was caught between states, dead according to reality but somehow still physically present and functional. A ghost in a truck delivering cargo, following routines, not yet aware enough of his death to fade away. He checked his cargo manifest. Industrial solvent due in Dallas by midnight March 14th. That was 4 hours from now. Tom made a decision. If he was dead, if he was some kind of echo or afterimage, he would complete this final delivery. He'd finish his job the way he'd always finished his jobs, on time, professionally, perfectly. Then he'd figure out what came next. Tom drove to the delivery address, a chemical processing plant in southeast Dallas. He backed up to the loading dock at 11:30 p.m. A dock worker emerged, checking his paperwork. The man showed no reaction to Tom being dead. Maybe workers on the graveyard shift at chemical plants weren't plugged into the same reality systems as everyone else. Industrial solvent from Phoenix, the dock worker asked. That's right. Full load, properly secured and placarded. The dock worker signed the paperwork and began unloading the cargo. Tom watched from his cab, feeling strange. This was his last delivery. Once the cargo was unloaded, his purpose would be fulfilled. What happened to ghosts who completed their unfinished business? Did they fade away, move on to whatever came next, or did they just keep driving forever, stuck in loops of routine? The dock worker finished and returned the signed paperwork. All set. Drive safe. Thanks, Tom said, knowing safety no longer applied to someone already dead. He drove his empty truck out of the plant and parked in a nearby industrial lot. He sat there for an hour, thinking about his life, his death, his strange existence in the hours after. Then he felt something change, a loosening, a release. His body started to fade, becoming transparent. He looked at his hands and saw through them to the steering wheel beneath. Tom wasn't afraid. Whatever came next, he'd face it the same way he'd faced every challenge in his career. Calmly, professionally, competently. He thought about Emma, hoped she'd remember him as a good father despite the divorce. Thought about Sarah, hoped she'd find peace. Thought about the thousands of miles he'd driven, the countless deliveries he'd made, the roads that had been his home for 14 years. His vision faded to white. The truck cab disappeared. Tom felt himself moving not through space but through something else, time maybe, or the boundary between existence and non-existence. Then he found himself standing on a highway shoulder watching traffic pass. His truck was gone. His body felt different, lighter, less substantial. A vehicle pulled over, not a truck, a sleek black sedan. The driver's window rolled down. A woman in a suit leaned out. Thomas Kane. Yes, Tom said. Who are you? Transition Services, the woman said. We collect those who don't realize they've moved on. You died 4 days ago but kept driving. That happens sometimes, strong sense of duty, unfinished deliveries, but your cargo is delivered now. Your last job is complete. Time to move forward. Where am I going? Tom asked. Wherever drivers like you go, the woman said. The endless highway, some call it. The great delivery route in the sky. Get in, I'll be there. Tom climbed into the sedan. As they drove away, he looked back at the industrial lot where his truck had been. It was gone now, returned to whatever reality dead men's trucks belonged to. Tom faced forward, watching the highway unroll ahead, ready for his final delivery, himself, to whatever destination waited beyond life. Thomas Kane's story became legend among drivers who run I-40. They talk about the ghost trucker who doesn't know he's dead, who appears sometimes on Arizona highways, still trying to deliver his cargo 3 years after his death. Some drivers claim to have seen him, a white truck with hazmat placards, driving perfectly legally, following all rules, but somehow wrong. When you try to call him on CB, he doesn't respond. When you check in mirrors, sometimes his truck isn't reflected. And if you pass him and look into his cab, the driver's seat appears empty, though you can see the truck is clearly being driven by someone. They say he'll keep delivering cargo forever, or until someone tells him he's dead, or until he finally completes enough deliveries to earn his rest. But nobody knows how many deliveries a ghost trucker needs to make before he can finally stop driving and accept that his road has ended. Story 10. The Highway That Looped Back. Carmen Rodriguez had been driving trucks for 17 years, and she developed an almost supernatural sense of when something was wrong. A sound in the engine that didn't belong. A vibration in the steering that indicated tire problems. A smell that suggested brake fade. She'd avoided countless mechanical failures through this intuition, maintaining a spotless safety record. But on August 9, 2021, on Highway 285 through southern Colorado, Carmen's intuition told her something was wrong with the road itself, and she had no idea how to fix a highway that had started bending back on itself through space and time. Carmen had departed from Denver at 7 p.m., hauling electronics to Albuquerque. The route took her south through Colorado Springs, then southwest through the mountains and high desert. Highway 285 was a good road, well-maintained, scenic, and usually low traffic at night. Carmen had run this route at least 30 times without incident. Around 11 p.m., she was roughly 20 miles north of Antonito, cruising through empty landscape at 65 mph. The night was clear, stars visible in stunning profusion away from city lights. Carmen had her CB radio on channel 19, listening to scattered trucker chatter from the few drivers on surrounding highways. That's when she passed the barn. It was distinctive, old red structure with a missing side wall, illuminated by her headlights for just a moment as she passed. The kind of photogenic ruin that Carmen would have stopped to photograph if she wasn't on a delivery schedule. She made a mental note to stop there on a future daytime run. 5 minutes later, she passed the same barn again. Carmen frowned, checking her GPS. It showed her progressing steadily south on Highway 285, mile markers incrementing normally. But she definitely passed that barn before. Same missing wall, same lean to the left, same pattern of weathered boards. 2 barns that similar seemed unlikely. 2 identical barns within 5 minutes of driving seemed impossible. Carmen grabbed her CB microphone. Any drivers on 285 in Colorado, you ever notice a lot of similar-looking barns in this area? Over. A voice crackled back. 285 southbound here, about 30 miles south of Saguache. Can't say I've noticed, but I'm not really paying attention to barns. Why? Over. Just curious, Carmen said. Seeing some repetitive landmarks, must be tired. Over. She continued driving, telling herself it was fatigue causing her to think she'd seen the same barn twice. But 10 minutes later, she passed it again. Same barn, same missing wall, same everything. This wasn't fatigue, this was impossible. Carmen pulled over to the shoulder and stopped. She got out of her truck, breathing the cool mountain air, looking around. The highway stretched straight in both directions, headlights of occasional vehicles visible miles away. Nothing looked unusual, just road, fence lines, dark landscape under starlit sky. But Carmen's intuition was screaming that something was very wrong. She got back in her truck and called the Albuquerque distribution center, planning to tell them she was dealing with a mechanical issue and would be delayed. But when the dispatcher answered, Carmen heard her own voice in the background of the call, talking to someone about delivery schedules. "Who's in the office with you?" Carmen asked. "I hear someone who sounds like me." "Nobody's here," the dispatcher said. "I'm alone in the office. You're probably hearing me talking to another driver on a different line." "Why?" "No reason," Carmen said. "I'll call back later." She hung up, disturbed. That had been her voice distinctly talking about the same delivery she was currently running. Carmen continued south, watching her odometer carefully. She'd driven exactly 8.7 miles when the barn appeared again, fourth time now. She slowed down, studying it as she passed. Definitely the same. She could see individual boards, the pattern of the damaged roof. This was the same physical structure, not a similar one. She stopped immediately after passing it and got out, walking back toward the barn. It sat about 100 yards off the highway, accessed by an overgrown dirt road. Carmen walked down the access road, using her flashlight to light the way. As she got closer to the barn, she noticed something strange. The structure looked three-dimensional and solid from the highway, but from this angle it looked somehow flat, like a movie set facade. She reached the barn and touched the wall. It felt solid, real wood, properly weathered. But when she walked to where the missing wall should reveal the barn's interior, she found nothing. No interior, no floor, no back wall. The barn was just a false front, three walls forming a shape that looked complete from the highway but was actually hollow. Carmen walked around the structure. Behind it was another identical barn facade facing the opposite direction. And beyond that, another and another. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, stretching into the darkness. All identical, all false fronts. Like a film set designer had created an endless series of copies to be viewed from moving vehicles. She returned to her truck, thoroughly unnerved, and continued driving south. 8.7 miles later, she passed the barn again. She didn't stop this time, just kept driving, checking her GPS obsessively. The device insisted she was progressing south, covering distance normally. But every 8.7 miles, she passed that same barn. After the seventh time passing it, Carmen tried turning around. She drove north for 15 minutes, then stopped and checked her position. The GPS showed her north of where she'd turned around, progressing normally. But when she looked for landmarks, she saw the barn ahead of her, approaching in her headlights. Carmen stopped the truck and tried to think rationally. She was in some kind of loop, 7 miles of highway that repeated endlessly, regardless of which direction she drove. The GPS reported normal progress, but the physical reality was that she kept traversing the same stretch of road over and over. How was this possible? A glitch in space-time, some kind of quantum loop, hallucination caused by carbon monoxide. She checked her phone. It showed the time as 11:47 p.m., which was impossible. She'd been driving and investigating for at least 2 hours since first noticing the barn, but her phone insisted only 47 minutes had passed since 11 p.m. Carmen checked her truck's dashboard clock. It agreed with her phone. Agreed with both, but her subjective experience told her much more time had passed. Time was distorted inside the loop. Every time she traversed the 8.7-mile segment, she experienced it as taking about 10 to 15 minutes. But according to clocks, each loop took only 5 minutes. She was experiencing time roughly 3 times slower than clocks measured it. Carmen grabbed her CB radio. "This is an emergency call on Highway 285 southbound in Colorado. I'm stuck in some kind of loop. Every 8.7 miles, I keep passing the same landmark. Can anyone else on this highway confirm they're experiencing the same thing?"